truth shining bright like city lights. Mama, biggest lies, we're calling her out. Kishka girl, we rise above the noise. With every sip, we reclaim our voice. Candace speaks, but we won't be misled. Sip the courage, let the truth be spread. Kamala's roots, they're deeper than you think. Family stories flow like coffee from the brink. Landed heritage, vibrant and bold. We'll sip and talk, let the truth be scrolled. Pour it strong, don't let them drown it out. Kishka girl, we rise above the noise. With every sip, we reclaim our voice. Candace speaks, but we won't be misled. Sip the courage, let the truth be spread. Courage or valor, lift us high and free. In this podcast world, truth is our decree. In the morning light, they brew a cup with purpose. Thomas and Matthew, coffee strong and worth this. Pillars of valor, courage blend ignites. They're spilling truth, shining bright like city lights. Mama, biggest lies, we're calling her out. Kishka girl, we rise above the noise. With every sip, we reclaim our voice. Candace speaks, but we won't be misled. Sip the courage, let the truth be spread. Be spread. Truth be spread. Spread. Truth be spread.
Okay, hello everybody. Welcome again to Gish Gallop Girl. You just heard the, God, what did I name that one? The Gish Gallop Girl Acid House Kamala family theme. You may have noticed in there we actually included Pillars of Valor, our preferred coffee brand now, in that. Again, unpaid plug. I would hope one day that they are successful enough and we are successful enough that, you know, look, I don't want any money. I just want like free coffee. You know, it's really good shit. So I figured we'd include it in the theme song there. Yeah, what's up?
A good like 2-pound bag, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd be fine with like a case every month or something.
I mean, yeah.
Come on, Zach, hook me up, man. Yeah.
Well, I think like 3 2-pound bags would be enough to get us through a month.
Maybe.
If I'm doing my math right.
Okay, look, what I've been bringing home are 12-ounce bags.
Okay, that's been making us through.
Now, here's the deal.
Yeah.
I've been sacrificing with the caribou to give y'all the good shit.
Yeah.
So, including my drinkage in there.
Because Chad, when we were like buying caribou in bulk, we were getting like.
Those are 2-pound bags.
Yeah, we were getting 2-pound bags, and that was lasting us like a week.
Actually, those are 2.5 pounds.
Okay.
They're 40-ounce bags, so which is 2.5 pounds. Yeah.
Those have been lasting us like a week and a half a piece.
Okay.
So, yeah. I think.
You know what? To cover the bases, 3 pounds.
Yeah,
some months are longer than others.
Yeah.
Except for February, which is a bitch month. It's a skinny little bitch February. You know why February is a bitch month, right? Okay, because January, think about it, right? Ride with me on this here. Okay, so January, like, and I see this too in my shipped work, but like everybody like wants to work out and get fit and lose the holiday pounds in January.
Yeah.
And so they work through it, and so February is the skinny little bitch month where everybody's a skinnier littler bitch and they're angry.
Yeah.
Hence the bitch part. They're angry. And then the Ides of March come, and we all forget the diets.
Yeah.
And we go back to eating things that we enjoy.
Yeah.
Because, hell, we're going to work it off in the summer. It's going to be hot, is what we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
We're all liars. We're all liars. All of us. But I wanted to especially work them in because I felt so bad about us mentioning them at the end of last week's episode, like right at the very end after we did our fucking drink review.
Yeah. Yeah.
I felt so bad on the playback of that because I was like every day I was listening to the playback and I was like, oh, God, I feel terrible. I mean, to his credit, Zach, the CEO, head brewer of that company, did not reach out and give me any shit. So, thank you for that, if you're listening to this, my friend. But I am going to send him that song.
Yeah.
I'll send him the song and see what he thinks. So, yes. We will also be including a link to the company. I do definitely recommend their Courage Blend. That's the dark roast. It is such good coffee.
Oh, yeah.
It really, really is. And yes, I really, appreciate a nice little shipment.
Yeah.
If they get good business, whether from us or not, I don't really care.
Yeah.
I would just like to think that they're like, hey, there's a little kickback.
Yeah.
They're just have us. I mean, it's a military theme, right?
Yeah.
So if they send us enough to ration out, right? Say maybe what's that? 3 times? Maybe 40 pounds. Maybe we could ration 40 pounds for like a year.
I mean, I could see us doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I saw that you wanted to like not play the game. You play the fucking game. Yeah. So.
Well, because I was trying to think, like, would 40 pounds actually do?
It would cover the spread. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it would cover the spread. Yeah. That said, I will be. I'll probably be legit buying it from their site soon because I've been getting it from Hy-Vee, and the one Hy-Vee that I've been getting it from, they only seem to have it in the one section. It's not on the regular coffee aisle yet. It's only in. Remember how we were there and like we were at their deli and I grabbed it from there because I was like, where the fuck is this shit?
Yeah.
And I went over to the spot where he was standing, where he was sampling it out the one day that I tried it, and I was like. That's also where I got it. I got the tonight's bag from.
Oh.
I got it from that same stand, and I'm like, this is the best coffee. It should have a place on the fucking coffee aisle. But,
yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, so yeah, I feel we've sufficiently talked about it enough. There was also some mention in the theme song about Kamala's family.
Yeah.
We're going to be discussing a little bit of that today. We're going to get into that a bit. A bit more than I would like, but not nearly as much as Candace did. Holy shit. We're going to get around to that, though.
Okay.
We're going to start this off, though, with episode 23. This is so before we really get into this, I want to thank everyone that is still in the audience. Going to a bi-weekly format even feels weird to me since we did 15 weekly episodes.
Yeah.
Until it had to change up, but here we are. Mm-hmm. I'm going to get into Blackout material first as we continue our run through the book, but I wanted to thank our patrons from the top. And if you want to support this show and get episodes the night we record them, effectively still a few days before the general public starts getting them in parts, head on over to Patreon and you actually can support this show for as little as $1 per month. No bullshit. Okay, let's get into Blackout Chapter 6 again, this time in the Academia section. I want to remind everyone that this chapter is supposed to be about education. I'm going to go back to the old way we used to do these book sections and just read the book parts in their entirety and stop when there's a fact to be discussed. In this case, there are no more facts or notes, just anecdotes. Anyway, here we go.
It's fitting that you have Blackout in the dark theme.
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, it's easier for me to read. All of my ebooks are like this.
Oh yeah. No, I completely understand.
I mean, I also like the little nightlight version where it makes the text orange. Then you're reading Halloween books all year round. So she says, there can hardly, and I'm gonna, if it sounds like I'm speeding this up, it's because I hear this in her cadence, and while I could stop myself, I don't want to. There can hardly be a meaningful discussion about black people in education without discussing how black culture is one of the biggest contributors to black failure, because education is not deemed cool by many black students. It is a sad fact that black students perform better academically when they are in a classroom of predominantly white students, as opposed to within predominantly black classrooms. The reason for this is never discussed because it points to an internal problem which runs against the current code of black blamelessness. The truth is that black Americans celebrate ignorance and accuse those among them who do not capitulate to Ebonics as acting white. Nobody knows this better than me. When I was in elementary school, students were not made to take standardized tests until we reached 8 years of age, and even after the testing, we were not divided into classrooms based on the results. This meant that my classrooms were racially diverse. Accordingly, I was best friends with a young Hispanic girl and a young black girl simply because they were in my class. When standardized testing began, I scored high enough that my third grade teacher recommended I skip up to the fourth grade. As I had just switched schools and had just started making friends, I cried hysterically to my mother and begged her to let me stay in the grade I was in. She acquiesced under the condition that I join an extraordinary learners program, which was a separate class that took place during the regular school day for students who were considered high achievers. All of the students in this program, except for me, happened to be white. Upon entering middle school, students were now placed in all classes according to their standardized test scores. I was placed in a class group that had predominantly white students. I had 2 other black students in my class. Like all students, I made friendships with the people who were in my class. This meant the majority of my friends became white, which was a shift from elementary school days. And that's when the bullying started. The black girls who were in lower academic groups would block me in the hallway when I was trying to get to class and shout rude insults at me. One girl in particular would bump my shoulder every time I walked by her in a hallway. I chose to ignore them. In one particular instance, a black girl called me over to her table in the cafeteria to ask me a question. As I walked over, I knew it was a setup, but I felt I had no choice but to engage her. When I arrived at the table, she asked me plainly, "Candace, if I were to say to you, holla, what would you say back?" I answered her honestly, I would say hello. The entire table filled with black girls began wildly hollering with laughter as I walked back to my table. Later, I would learn that the correct answer was holla back, a colloquial term popularized by the biggest hip-hop song of that time. I really hope she's not referring to Holla Back Girl by Gwen Stefani, who may be the whitest human that has ever whited.
Yeah. I don't know why whited that doesn't sound right.
Neither does Gwen Stefani in a lot of her music. Okay, I'm giving her a lot of shit. I'm going to be honest with you. No Doubt's Tragic Kingdom album is one of my favorites. The song Sunday Morning I felt didn't get enough airplay during its time. But yeah. So so I read that. Quite frankly, I wasn't much interested in keeping up with popular hip-hop songs because J.K. Rowling had released another installment of Harry Potter, and I was racing home to read it every day before any of my friends could spoil the ending. All of this chalked up to their regular assessment that I was acting white, and that was reason enough for black girls to try to humiliate me. Years later, I wound up sharing an art class with the girl who used to bump my shoulder. We became instant friends. I asked her why she used to bump my shoulder, and I will never forget the answer she gave me. "I just thought you were stuck up. I didn't realize you were cool." She had convicted someone whom she had never even spoken to on the basis of little more than an assumption. An assumption based on the fact that I was in a higher academic group. In high school, the girl who used to block me in the hallway and insult my outfits wound up in my geometry class. We two became fast friends. When I asked her why she used to pick on me, her answer was equally as absurd. "I don't know. We just all thought you were a bitch," she quipped. Of course, though convicted of the charge, I was never acting white. My true crime lay in the fact that I was speaking proper English, correctly answering questions on tests, and reading books rather than keeping up hip-hop terminology. To my race, this represented some sort of a betrayal. I was not considered to be acting black. I was not conforming to an unwritten code of blackness. Of course, the idea that black children who perform well in school are somehow acting white is in and of itself a racist assessment. It insinuates that intelligence is an attribute that belongs to white people. It signals to black youth that academic success is not for them. It fosters a culture where brighter black students must decide between wanting to be accepted by their race or performing well in their studies. The truth is that those who accuse others of acting white are themselves acting quite foolish. Now, the burden of freedom. The fundamental issue is that after 60 years of Democrat allegiance, black America has been led to believe that we are exceptions to every rule. But we cannot be excused from hard work, studying, and good decision-making, and then feign appalling surprise when we fail next to our peers. We cannot accept ourselves from diligence and claim injustice over our varied results. Holding us hostage in insufficient elementary, middle, and high schools is not enough. The education system, in tandem with the left, grants us entitlements that do nothing but paint an illusion of accomplishment, an illusion that collapses at the first tremor of competition. In today's black culture, the residue of earlier racist misgivings about our capabilities further alienates and limits our progress. We so often hear the expression, freedom is not free. But what exactly does that mean? It means that freedom isn't a young woman in an open field with her head tilted toward the sun. It's more likely a young woman sitting at home studying, even though she'd much rather be out with her friends. It's a young man getting accepted into a highly ranked university on the basis of his outstanding academic performance. Freedom is personal responsibility. It's the sacrifices we make personally so that we may afford our lives certain privileges. Ronald Reagan famously said, "Freedom is never more than a generation away from extinction. We don't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same." Though fought for, true black freedom was never achieved and protected. It's time for a new generation of blacks to take up the fight for it once again. And the next chapter that we will start getting into next time is on media. So, yeah. That was, I want to remind y'all that that chapter that took the longest to get through out of all of them had only 2 reference notes in the back.
Fuck.
The chapter on education only had 2 reference notes in the back. Of the 20-something pages that were there, the majority of that was personal stories and anecdotes.
Damn.
And assumptions. Yeah. Yeah. That chapter I hated. Okay, I have not liked any of the chapters, and every chapter I think that I've just finished reading is the one that I currently hate the most. I'm not looking forward to the next chapter.
One? Yeah.
There's like 6 more to go.
Ah.
Yeah. I think the rest are smaller, but I don't know. Like, my own head is stopping me from looking ahead.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to know. Like, if there's a longer chapter that I'm going to have to slog through, I don't want to know till I get to it.
Yeah.
You know? It's like crossing a bog filled with shit. And you're going to come out smelling like piss. You know, but the bog is longer each time. And you're like, oh, okay, well, hopefully that was the last, shit floating piss bog that I have to go through. And then you go like another mile and you're like, oh no, I'm still here in England. Yeah, I'm going to pick on England because they produced her husband.
Oh, fair enough.
I have learned some shit about their relationship.
I was actually talking to an Englishman earlier.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, one of the people that's going to be in a D&D session I'm running here soon.
Yeah.
Was talking to him, and we ended up on British history.
Ah.
And he just started laughing his ass off, talking about all of the fact that the British Empire was technically a Germanic empire because the queen that ran it, Queen Victoria, was German, with a German husband, with German children.
Okay.
And he's sitting there and he's like, there's so many different, like, the successful empires have never been actually British English empires. They have all been European rulers that have taken over the country for a short time.
I mean, I think there was a Dutch one, William of Orange.
There was also a, I think you said his name's William the Conqueror, who was French.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he was the one that killed the last true British king.
I think he came over with the Normans or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not entirely up on my British history because I have this.
Yeah.
I have this, and this dominates my shit. And what isn't this is current politics that are very America focused right now.
Yeah. Yeah. The favorite fact about the British is internal wars, though. The one that they had with the Welsh.
Yeah.
The Welsh fortified themselves inside of one of the Duchess's keeps.
Yeah. Well, the Welsh were never taken.
Here's the funny part about their war, though, was even though they pushed them back into the keep and they stayed in the keep, they had supply tunnels going out.
Yeah.
As the British found them and squashed them, they were like, okay, we're running out of food options. And they started eating their shoes because their shoes were a rawhide leather. So they could still deprive nutrients from their shoes.
Right.
And that's one of the few things that they did
Well,
that won them the war of attrition against them.
Well, because the Welsh were, they were never conquered.
No.
They were negotiated. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is why once you cross the bridge and you have to pay your toll, once you get across, now you're in Wales and you're underneath whatever the fuck Wales decides to say.
Yeah. But that's also why, like, the current Prince of Britain or whatever is always the Prince of Wales or whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so right at the top here, Candace has been on a crusade of sorts over the last week as I write this. Her crusade having to do with the blatant lie that she has been pushing now about Kamala Harris not being black. Mm-hmm. She started, as we covered previously, by saying that Harris was Indian fully. No Jamaican in her parental line whatsoever. We said that was a lie, that her family on her father's side is African descended and from Jamaica over several generations. So that falls apart on basic scrutiny. Anyway, Candace only knows how to double down on stupid racist takes and has spent the bulk of... When I wrote this, it was 6 episodes.
Yeah.
It was the bulk of 12 episodes.
Fucking hell.
Yeah. It turned out to be the bulk of 12 episodes, following a line of thought that says Harris's father's side of the family is not black. There's going to be a lot of dense material and supposition on her part for almost all of this, and it isn't helped along by her having offered a bounty of $1,000 to whoever would get her certain bits of the info she is seeking. But we'll get there. The first is the cold open for episode 70.
All right, happy Monday, everyone. You know what? Can everybody just be real quiet for a second? I want to see if we can hear it. No, I don't hear anything at all. Nope. Definitely not hearing LeBron James on the subject of Diddy, which is weird. I'm going to actually need to hear from LeBron James on the subject of Diddy because he speaks out about virtually every other topic. Nobody asks his opinion. He gives his opinion. He's lecturing us. He's called the king. So why stay mum on your boy? That's my question. Plus, Ice Cube responds to my statement that gangster rap was created by the feds, and Janet Jackson has a message for Kamala Harris.
You ain't black.
You know what? She's getting a lot of pushback, but I'm going to have her back here because I decided to fully investigate Kamala Harris's genealogy, and what I discovered is a shocking discrepancy which no one has yet come across. Internet, I'm going to need your help. Welcome to Candace.
Yep, she asked the internet for help. I, like our listeners and our patrons, are of course my favorite among them all. But I would not go to the general public for this kind of help. Then, Candace spends the next 8.5 minutes lying about and glossing over the many inciting incidents that fueled the Black Lives Matter protests of the last several years. But she keeps coming back to LeBron James, NBA basketball player, because he has been outspoken about the violence from cops on black citizens being wrong in every sense. Well, LeBron might also be implicated in the Diddy scandal.
So one thing that I've recognized is that LeBron James, despite saying all of this, is really mum on the Diddy case. I mean, if he cares so much about black victimhood, you would think that he would use his platform to speak right now when the perpetrators are, his friends, allegedly. Let me show you this clip of LeBron James speaking about how much he loves a Diddy party.
Hey, everybody know ain't no party like a Diddy party, so.
Yeah, that's what's up. Yeah.
Ain't no party like a Diddy party. And by the way, he's not lying there. From everything that I've read, if these allegations are true, there truly is no party like a Diddy party. Because I don't know any party. I've been to a lot of parties in my youth. Never did we have like pink cocaine in bottles and like thousands of bottles of baby oil and people that were sex slaves sleeping with each other. We just did not. So it could be just factually a true statement to say that there ain't no party like a Diddy party. Now let me show you this clip of him partying with Diddy dancing to a Migos song. Take a listen.
Yeah, I'm not playing the audio from that. As that one, it's just badly recorded audio. And 2, possible copyright infringement. And 3, this is an audio medium. It's kind of impossible to imagine anything other than a party going on by hearing it. But moving on.
Well, it looks like he's having a really good time. It looks like he's had a lot of time with Diddy. They've been friends for years. They're always hugging, dapping up, bad boys for life, right? And so where is LeBron James, who has elected himself the mayor of speaking out when nobody cares to hear his opinion, speaking out to emote to Black Americans, to make Black Americans emotional in order to make them feel justified in their behavior when they riot and they loot? Because that's what he's doing. He's in his mansion. He's tweeting, "You see? We can't even step outside in Beverly Hills. We can't even." And then the Black youth are seeing this. They're going, "That's my king." And they take to the streets and they get themselves in trouble. So again, where is LeBron on the Diddy thing? Because if you're telling me that you use your platform to speak out when there are Black victims, there sure as hell seems to be a lot of them when it comes to Diddy. In fact, it would seem, if these allegations are true, that he was systematically victimizing Black men. He was systematically victimizing producers, victimizing women. We saw him obviously beat Cassie. He took ownership of that, so we don't have to say allegedly. When it comes to him beating Cassie, you were friends with him throughout all of this. You were at these parties. You are seeing more and more people speak out about how they were sexually assaulted allegedly at these parties. We understand that people were drugged without them knowing. If, again, these allegations are true from producer Lil Rod and they are replacing the liquor with a cocktail of cocaine and psychostimulants, where are you, king? I say to Black America all the time, bring me your kings and bring me your queens. These are the people that you're supposed to follow into the street as you burn down your own neighborhoods. And now, when you have an objective reality like this one, Diddy having been arrested, not being allowed to make a bail because of how severe the allegations are, people that have produced footage and photos and are speaking out about how scared they are for their lives. Remember, Lil Rod is in hiding, saying that he is scared for his life because he has people everywhere. Has LeBron James offered to cut a check? Has LeBron James simply made a statement that this is wrong? Has LeBron James maybe just said, "Hey, I was at those parties, but I didn't realize that this was taking place"? Or, hear me out, is it plausible that the reason that LeBron James is opting to be so quiet is because when he read that lawsuit and realized that Diddy had cameras everywhere, unbeknownst to his party goers at these freak-offs, is it plausible that he's got LeBron James doing something that he wouldn't want made public? Is it plausible that Ye was right and the feds were using him to keep people in control by filming them when they're high, when they're drunk, when they're doing something that they wouldn't want people to know that they were doing behind closed doors? Maybe it's just cheating on a spouse, who knows? Is it plausible that he's collected something about LeBron James that he is fearful may be made public? I don't know. I'm just asking questions. I'm just asking for the king to use his platform to speak to us peasants. And that's all I'm saying about that.
Yeah, so that's going to be the end of LeBron for now. A little digging brought up that the last video known of LeBron at a Diddy party is from 2018, which was Diddy's 49th birthday. And earlier this year, LeBron stopped following Diddy on social media. I don't like to speculate or even touch this kind of thing, but Diddy and LeBron seem to have gotten distant over the last few years, not just recently. So for Candace to be among those dragging this up, I think is just more of a personal vendetta that she has with Black celebrities. It's a way to get herself on media platforms and nothing more. In the wake of this episode, the strategy worked, and Owens wound up being clipped and quoted on several YouTube and off-tube programs. Candace now also has a new hero in Janet Jackson. I used to like her music back in the 90s, but I honestly forgot about her over the last few years. I kind of wish that were still the case now. Candace goes on to read from and editorialize on her own an interview Janet Jackson did with The Guardian in the UK. I'm skipping ahead to the part that I found the most important.
Real. Now, it goes on, and she's quoting Janet here. On the Rhythm Nation album, for us, it was about making a difference in a kid's life, a teenager's life, from them taking this path with drugs and going down the wrong street to trying to make something of themselves. On that record, she sang about joining voices in protest to social injustice and pushing toward a world rid of color lines. I wonder where she stands in the forthcoming election. After all, I say, America could be on the verge of voting its first black female president, Kamala Harris. This is Janet Jackson. Well, you know what they said, supposedly, she asked me. She's not black. That's what I heard, that she's Indian. She looks at me expectantly, perhaps assuming that I have Indian heritage. Well, she's both, I offer. Her father's white, Janet says. That's what I was told. I mean, I haven't watched the news in a few days. I was told they discovered her father was white. The journalist writes, I'm floored at this point. It is well known that Harris's father is a Jamaican economist, a Stanford professor who split from her Indian mother when she was 5. Okay. So this journalist is obviously not a journalist. This person is an activist. They were sent to do this interview for a reason, sent to write this profile piece to make it look like Janet is crazy, and of course sent to get the quotation she expected, which was that it's going to be amazing to have a black woman as president because, again, they're signaling to black people, get into line, this is your new Obama, despite any evidence that she is black. And so I actually thought, has anybody really investigated Kamala Harris's genealogy? Like, we just keep being told she's black suddenly, and the media keeps overreacting when people say she's not black, and I can't find any evidence that Kamala Harris is black. So I said, I'm going to pause everything and do a deep dive on Kamala Harris's genealogy, and what I discovered is so shocking, okay? So first, let's start with just Kamala Harris's birth certificate. This is it. This is an authentic copy of it. It's already been discussed. You can see in the corner there.
Okay, so there it is. Before we go on, this is going to dominate her show over, at the time of this writing, much of the next 2 weeks of her show. Most of every episode is devoted to Candace and her audience either making up papers, photoshopping things, getting basic facts wrong, and making up family trees on Ancestry.com, which anyone can do. I'm not going to address every lie, mistruth, error, etc. Even though debunking her is what we do, I feel okay in saying that most of this is hot air and bullshit, because much of it is unproven supposition from Candace and her followers. Most of what we will be talking about is not about this, because most of it is a distraction from Candace to her audience, keeping them distracted from the fuckery going on in Trumpland. Trump has been showing more of his fascist cards left and right, and a lot of it would be hard for her to address directly, so she's doing this bullshit instead. I think it's reckless and dangerous because this is the kind of crap that causes people to react violently to public figures. But we're going to go over this most basic shit on the birth certificate of the person I hope will be our next president. Anyway, here we go.
We have highlighted on her mother's name is an Indian name, Shailamala Gopalan, and under color or race of mother, her mother has put Caucasian, extremely controversial, but we don't need to focus on the mother because the mother, everyone accepts the mother is not black at all, right? So if she's some part Caucasian, majority Indian, everyone accepts that the mother is not the claim to her black heritage, it is the father.
Okay, so first let's go over this with Harris's mother. She is listed as Caucasian on the form because when Kamala Harris was born, that was common for Indian people to place as their skin tone, race, what have you, because it was thought that they were descended from the Caucasus region. The term Caucasian wasn't being applied to white folks yet. There was a time not long ago when the term Caucasian and Indian were almost synonymous. I'm mentioning this because people are of course using it to flippantly say that Harris isn't Indian because they don't understand how language can change, even over a couple of decades. Moving on.
On the bottom there, you can see that it says that her father's name is Donald Jasper Harris, and that the color or the race of the father is listed as Jamaican. Okay? So, you can be Jamaican, you can grow up in Jamaica and not be black, obviously. It's like Elon Musk, like he was born and raised in Africa. It would be absurd for Elon Musk to say that he was black, because he is not black. He is a white African. So I wanted to go further into Donald Jasper Harris, allegedly born in Jamaica in 1938. He has indicated that someone in his family is black. So who are his parents? Okay. So this is Kamala's dad, Donald Harris. We're looking now into Kamala's grandparents. The grandparents' names are Beryl Christie Finnegan Harris and Oscar Joseph Brown Harris. So let's start with Beryl. Let's start with her grandmother. This is an alleged photo of Beryl Christie Harris, okay? It is the only one that exists in the public domain, and I want you guys to know that it was presented by Kamala herself. I looked at it and I was like, oh, okay, like where did this photo come from? Actually, Kamala is the one that entered this into the public domain in her book, which is entitled The Truths We Hold, which was published in 2019. So looking at this woman, she looks black, and she wrote, visiting my paternal grandmother, Beryl, in Jamaica, okay? Now, when I saw this, I assumed it was a fake photo, and I assumed that somebody had put it up other than Kamala, because just doing a very brief search, and then I quadruple checked this across multiple websites, genealogy websites, and genealogists, that can't be Kamala's grandmother. Let's pull up a picture of her again. That can't be Kamala's grandmother, because at least according to my research, Grandma Beryl died before Kamala was born.
Yep, and also no. So this is true. Beryl did die about 4 years before Kamala was born. However, what Candace fails to mention is that the woman with her in the photo is Kamala's great-grandmother, Iris, who was still alive up until 1981 when Kamala was about 17. I actually got the book itself on the Google Play Store for about $10, and it does have 2 photos of Kamala and Miss Iris in it. One of the photos is Kamala as a toddler on Miss Iris's lap, and the other one is her standing next to her as a teenager. The one where Kamala is older is a misprint, as it says she is standing next to Beryl. I read through the short but excellent story that Donald Harris wrote about his childhood in Jamaica around Beryl, Iris, Miss Christie, and the experience of taking his daughters to see where he was from when they were young girls. I'll be linking it in the show notes. Professor Donald Harris, father of U.S. Vice President, to receive Jamaica's 3rd highest honor from the Jamaica Observer, and there's a link. So I'll be dropping that in the show notes. It is from this misprinted caption of a photo that Candace and her audience make an entire story up as they go along for well over 2 weeks of her show. Given that we are on a bi-weekly schedule now, and because most of this is hot garbage, we won't be covering much of it, but we will cover some of it. I realize this puts me in more of a curator position than usual, but it is what it is. Candace goes on for the next several minutes claiming information she actually doesn't have, saying that Donald Harris's paternal grandmother was the daughter of a white Irish slave trader. This is a lie. She claimed to have been descended from Hamilton Brown, who was a slave trader and an owner in Brownstown, Jamaica. He was an Irishman, and he was as terrible as any slave trader and owner at the time. He raped his slave women and had several children by them, as well as his own descendants from his marriage. But using her false information, Candace goes on to claim that Kamala is majority Irish white. It's all gross and very wrong, and I'm not playing it. Candace goes on to offer a bounty for information, though.
All of these people have apparently evaporated into thin air. Literally cannot find a single trace of these people who definitely do not have black names, okay? And I'm just going, I just want to see a picture here. So I'm going to put a bounty on it. I would like someone to do a little bit of due diligence here. Find me Beryl Finnegan and Beryl's 3 siblings, okay? A photo, anything, $1,000. You email it to info@CandaceOwens.com, because I am telling you, something is not right here. How did nobody realize that Beryl died in 1960 and Kamala, in her book, published a photo of a grandparent who she wasn't alive to meet, okay? Where is the real Beryl? Like a photo of Beryl, a photo of any of Beryl's siblings, literally disappeared without a trace. This is the only reason, okay, that people are convinced that Kamala must have some black in her family, is because of these alleged relatives. And it's just ironic because her family is extraordinarily Irish white, extraordinarily wealthy owning descendants. And the only reason we have this image in our head, just like Trump said, suddenly she was black, is because Kamala's father in 2020, just after Kamala published that photo in her book, Kamala's father in 2020 similarly decided to publish an essay entitled Reflections of a Jamaican Father.
Yeah, she's no grief Karga for sure. That's the essay that I linked to already, and it wasn't published in 2020. It was published in 2019 and updated with the correction in 2020. The correction is noted at the end of the essay. It's not a long read, but it is pretty interesting. As for the bounty, I believe that this action is what brought other con artists out of the woodwork. People slightly smarter than Candace and her team, who are better at Photoshop or GIMP than most people. Going on a bit, this is the thrust of her entire argument.
Where he only included, in all of his white Irish slave-owning family, he only decided to include a photo of Miss Iris and Miss Chrissy, who look like the same person to me. Why would he do that? We've got a big old family, got a ton of wealth, everyone's got a slave. Why did you decide in 2020 to publish a photo of these two women, just like Kamala did in her book?
That's that's a little racist, saying the two old black women look
Alike.
almost identical. Yeah.
Well, here's where it gets more fucked up, right? Okay, so that's Miss Chrissy right there. I'll be including all the pictures in the show notes, listeners. That's Miss Chrissy right there, right?
Yeah.
This is Miss Iris.
All right.
Now, that's Miss Iris. That's Kamala as a little girl, like toddler.
Yeah.
This is her at 17.
Mm-hmm.
That's the same woman. That's Miss Iris. Now, this was in the book, which I have. This has been misprinted as she says she's standing there with her grandmother, Miss Iris.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, Miss Beryl. Beryl. Yeah, she said, I'm standing here with my grandmother, Beryl. Okay, that's a misprint.
Yeah.
It's clearly a misprint. That's Miss Iris and Kamala. And that's in the book, too, as Iris and Kamala.
Yeah.
And that's Miss Chrissy from the, I'm not sure if that's from the book. That's definitely in the article, and so is that one.
Yeah.
So those two photos are definitely in the article, but yeah. So, yeah,
Also, if she's saying, firstly, the Beryl name.
Yeah.
Does she not know how a lot of, the slavery markets worked, that when they got their freedom, they usually ended up with whomever their master's last name was as part of their name?
Yeah, you kind of get where we're going to wind up at.
Because that's
that's why in Jamaica,
yeah.
Hamilton Brown was a major slave trader
Yeah.
in Jamaica. They literally named a town after the man, Brownstown.
Yeah.
Brown is the most common last name in Jamaica.
Mm-hmm.
I think it goes Brown, James, and Smith.
Yeah.
I think Harris is somewhere down the line. It's the 37th most common last name.
Yeah.
It's way down the line. Out of I think 500 common last names in Jamaica from what I read. But yeah, Brown is the most common last name there.
Okay.
Because of what you said there, Hamilton Brown
Yeah.
owned a lot of people, which is not something anyone should have ever been able to do.
Yeah.
But yes, he owned a lot of people. He called a lot of shots.
Mm-hmm.
Just like with Thomas Jefferson, he banged a bunch of his slaves.
Yeah.
Which it's safe to call that rape since they probably didn't have consent.
Yeah.
I mean, if they did, great, but the nature of that relationship is that they didn't have consent.
Yeah.
So.
And, well, that's the first part. And then the second part is having clear pictures of clearly... Iris is the great-grandmother, right?
Yes, Iris is the great-grandmother. Yeah, she's Beryl's mom.
Okay. Sitting there and saying that Miss Iris there clearly is descendantly heavily white Irish.
Yeah.
Seems a little far out there.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, because she's clearly an older black lady, and so is Miss Chrissy here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, you can tell that's Miss Iris. That's her.
Yeah.
You know, not even 20 years later. That's clearly her. Like, they know this, and they are blowing this whole thing out of proportion because of a fucking misprint.
Yep.
Yeah, so let's go on to the next bit here.
All right, guys. So by the time we finished our episode on Friday, I realized that I was trending on the internet, and I was trending on the internet because I tweeted something. I will tell you what I tweeted. Gangster rap was never black culture. It was created by the feds who proffered deals to homosexual black men in prison and then turned them into artificial celebrities. The goal was to create false idols, to destroy black American values. I will never change my mind on this. Obviously. So I guess people started asking some rappers who they believe contributed to the gangster rap scene whether or not what I had to say was correct. And Ice Cube responded. He wrote, "We called it reality rap. The industry coined it gangster rap. The fans wanted gangster rap, and that's what they got. The feds didn't write none of my shit. I'm a real MC." Okay, so I never said the feds wrote the music. So all these like publications were like, that Ice Cube debunks or whatever, like Ice Cube gets Candace and says that this is crazy theory. I never said they wrote the lyrics. I do not think the feds are writing the lyrics to Sexy Red. That's not how this works, you know? And I would, by the way, welcome this conversation with you, Ice Cube, because I think you probably do understand exactly what I'm talking about, okay? So essentially, and this is not just, by the way, for gangster rap music. This is also it was an entire Fed operation. When you look into Tavistock Institute, they introduced love, drugs, and rock and roll. Like the hippie music and the hippie era was not organic. I hope you recognize that by now. It was actually the CIA that provided the LSD, got everybody high, okay? And you can look up Charles Manson, who was a part of the MK Ultra program. He was a person that was in and out of prison. They decided to turn him into an asset. He was given all of these drugs to distribute, to get people high all of the time. That is what I'm speaking about. So they have some explicit end, and they introduce a drug into the community. I believe truly when it comes to the hippie generation, it was about turning a very Christian society into a free love, sex everywhere type of society. And the book that I recommend you guys read, if you're looking for documents and looking for people to cite where that came from, you guys know I've told you to read Chaos 1,000 times. I'm going to tell you 1,000 more times. It's really shocking to understand how much the feds were involved in distributing CIA.
I finally read this damn book.
Yeah.
And it does not say that shit at all. Tom O'Neill is a great writer, and the book has an instant pull. It's well crafted. And it's kind of gory. It's really fucked up. But he does not provide direct evidence to the shit Candace has been saying for months now. Which leads me down a couple of possible roads. I think she either read it and has terrible reading comprehension, or someone else read it and they reported the findings to her with their own spin or bad reading comprehension. The Tavistock Institute, which, aside from having a cool name, it doesn't engage in culture manipulation. And while the CIA notably did do a lot of experiments on soldiers and government people with LSD and other drugs through the 60s and on into the 70s, there is no provable or direct connection to the Manson family murders. This is horse shit on a huge scale. Candace goes on to lie more about UMG record executive Lucian Grange, who I'll remind y'all is Jewish.
Actually, ironically, speaking of the Beatles, Lucian Grange, who was named in the Diddy suit as the person that's allegedly sits at the top with Diddy, used to be working for the Beatles. He had a different last name, a totally different last name. It used to just be G-E-E. And he worked with his father as a tailor to the Beatles. And now he's a giant music exec. So, as I said, more will come out. I stand by my statement that gangster rap was intentionally encouraged, and then they found some people that were just straight up actors to play this role of a gangster, and one of those people is obviously Tupac. So let's just watch this footage. You may forget this. Tupac was an actor, and I'm pretty sure he was not a heterosexual actor either on the basis of this clip. Take a listen.
Grange's father, not Lucian Grange, was a fashion designer. He worked with the Beatles and many other people, and he tried to change his last name to G because he thought it sounded cool and would help him stand out among other fashion designers at the time. Lucien did not work with his father. This was not the family business, but he probably did use his connections to get ahead in his own career, which I would expect of anyone.
Yeah, if your fucking father that you have a semi-decent relationship with knows music execs,
And that's the field you want to get into.
that's your
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, Dad, I know you're working on a suit for so and so. Do you mind if I come into the shop so I can, pitch my shit?
Right. I mean,
Like-
or even just like, or you go to the same parties.
Yeah,
You
that
brush
too.
up against the same people. They offer you an office job. Shit goes from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get in, but you got to prove yourself from that point.
Mm-hmm.
It's an in that most people don't get. Some jackass off the street, like myself, for instance, could apply. I'm not going to get in that far. I'm not going to get in at all.
No.
Yeah. So, anyway, Lucien has not tried to change his own name. Grange was named in the Diddy suit brought on by Rodney Jones, but he is not named at this time in the criminal case brought on by New York. Just more bullshit and fudging the picture for her smooth brain audience because Grange happens to be Jewish. But it should be noted that he was dropped from the Diddy lawsuit with Rodney Jones almost immediately. It's just more horseshit. As for the Tupac clip she plays, she uses it to say that in her opinion Tupac Shakur was gay. I really don't care, but nothing really points to that. This is just her doing rage bait, which is why I typically don't fuck with her celebrity bullshit. She does more of that with Katy Perry, which takes her to the end of her show, and then she gets into comments over on Rumble. Nothing important there, so on to episode 71.
Well, happy Tuesday. I can tell you guys one thing. The powers that be really did not like our episode yesterday. Because after we crossed 500,000 views in less than 5 hours, suddenly we got hit on YouTube with this bizarre age restriction. We've never been hit with that ever before. It said that we somehow violated the policy on graphic violence and nudity. I mean, what? We literally just read Kamala's book and pointed out a major discrepancy. Mainly that her grandmother, who she produced a photo of herself with, happened to die before Kamala was born. So yeah, seems a little odd. Just asking questions here. Well, today we were able to secure the birth certificates and the death certificates and some marriage certificates, which confirm that Kamala either made a huge mistake, all by accident, or she outright lied because she wanted to convince the public that she was black. Do not go away, you guys, because this is about to get crazy. Welcome back to Candace.
Maybe her viewers fall for that shit, but I can tell you that the video still has an age warning. And she showed content in that video from a hidden camera from a Diddy party.
Yeah.
So, maybe that was the issue, not reading from a fucking book.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, she goes on to detail a bunch of comments about Janet Jackson claiming that Kamala Harris is white. We know that's bullshit, and she keeps going with it for about 5 minutes. But then she says,
So last night we decided to continue our research to see if we could find birth certificates and marriage certificates and death certificates which could further signify those points, and indeed it did. And it also raised even more questions about her genealogy, so let's go through those.
Okay, so I'm not going to play what follows this, but let me explain. She was not able to just get those alleged documents overnight. For one thing, the Jamaican Registrar's Office doesn't just kick those out on demand.
No.
You have to apply with some pretty specific information. You need the person's name as it is spelled on the form, the parents' names, the date of birth, the place of birth, which includes the city, district, and parish, which we also know of as a county here. Part of this includes the birth entry number, which has a code before the number that indicates the location a person was born, plus their individual number. Such as your number would have the coding for where you were born, but also say 125, if you were the 125th person born there specifically in that year. Not all of this is needed, and anyone can apply to see anyone else's birth certificate from Jamaica, but having it on hand makes processing times run much faster. Still, though, the fastest processing time is no less than 2 weeks.
Yeah. Not the next day.
No. The normal time is several weeks, and it's more, of course, if you lack any of the basic information. Marriage certificates are harder to get, as even though it's also a process of application, a person usually needs to be one of the people on the certificate. Again, even if this is the case or the Jamaican government authorizes it, it can take up to a month. One of the things you generally have to know is who performed the ceremony and if it was civil or in a church. But again, the government doesn't tend to release these to non-named individuals or non-family. Finally, death certificates, which she also claims to have specific criteria as well. These include the deceased full name, date of death, place of death, and the death entry number found on the burial order. The people that can request this is also very limited, and those are only next of kin, an adult present at the time of death, or the person responsible for the burial or the cremation, but it gets more granular. You also need, for natural deaths, a medical certificate of natural causes signed by an attending physician, and if it's a violent death, you need a post-mortem coroner report issued after a police investigation and an autopsy. The wait time on this is anywhere from a few days to several weeks if all the proper paperwork is in order. I had to look up all of the procedures and shit, so I can tell you there is no way they just got all of this shit overnight on their own. So Candace is completely full of shit here. But let's say the people sent this to her. Maybe she had a private eye over there that furnished her with this stuff and started weeks ago. Unless they are direct family or providing counterfeit identification, there's no way they got the right information to her based on all of the holes that she will bring up over this episode and the next 9 episodes that follow. But having said all of this, having pointed all of this out, most of these episodes are skippable in the Kamala Harris genealogy stuff because Candace pretends to have some grasp of these things, but she really doesn't. One of the things that comes up time and again is when she doesn't have marriage records for certain people that are married. Well, in Jamaica, a couple that cohabitates for 5 years is common law married, with all the rights and responsibilities that conveys. She doesn't bring that up once, and it would apply to some of the couples that she mentions. So with that in mind, I want you all to know that I have had to listen to many hours of this shit, and while you are free to do it yourselves, I'm saving everyone a massive amount of time, anger, and boredom, and skipping over it because this is lower than celebrity bullshit to me. She is trying to actively disprove that Kamala Harris is black, to try to pull the black vote away from her, and to incite racist bullshit among the worst people. Candace, having status as, quote, one of the good ones in that world, along with a ton of other unfortunate people, such as Sheriff David Clark, Dr. Ben Carson, and the asshole from South Carolina, Mark Robinson, who we spoke about the last time. She is trying to incite racial hatred with this series of lies based on half-baked forms that she almost certainly could not have obtained legally or at all. Fuck her for this bullshit, and I'm not engaging with it further. We will note the length of time it takes moving forward, but we're not wasting any more time on it, with the exception of mentions on her cold opens. Moving past this, she talks about JoJo Siwa. It's celeb bullshit. Going past it, we get more Diddy stories from celebrities, more ads, and then we get a glimpse into how incredibly cheapskate Candace is before she goes into the comments.
All right, guys, you know how this works. We are going to be jumping over to Rumble to read your responses. I cannot wait to hear what you have to say about Kamala Harris. Also, should add here, I am definitely going to I have to break up the $1,000 bounty because the person who got me the marriage certificate, that came in via an email, and I did not have that. And I said $1,000, and I'm going to have to break it up because there were some little tidbits that I still want to follow down the rabbit hole, but I want to make sure that every piece of information that I have is concrete. So I'm going to take it slowly, do a slow leak every single day on Kamala, But that money, I am going to give it to you guys, and I will announce who it was that gave me that information tomorrow. Again, guys, the comment section is going to be on Rumble. We're going to abandon YouTube. The reason we're doing this is because YouTube has just been particularly evil with me as of late, and we, of course, want to make sure that we're building somewhere else, just in the event that YouTube just keeps coming for my head, because all I do is tell the truth, and I don't know. Some people don't like that. I think there's some people that are fake mass reporting my YouTube page.
Oh, I'm not fake mass reporting that shit. I'm real mass reporting that shit. But yeah, baby. Candace makes at least $300,000 per month on her locals page.
Yeah.
From the time I wrote this to yesterday, when I looked again, I was answering something on Reddit.
Yeah.
It's up to $321,000 that she makes per month now.
Huh.
Given the amount of followers she has on locals.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not to mention sponsors.
Mm-hmm.
Income from Rumble, because you do get Rumble money.
Yeah.
Bitcoin donations. Podcast revenue. And so on. So, since we know how difficult and unlikely it was that someone got her a marriage certificate overnight, no less, that is probably some impressive Photoshop work. So she's breaking up the bounty to this person. That is truly a dick move. Before we go into episode 72, I want to save and play the next bit in case Candace is ever sued and they need proof in court that she isn't just an entertainer.
And Bub writes, isn't it funny that both Obama and Kamala came out with a book about their heritage shortly before running for president, trying to create the narrative? Yes, and this also follows what happened with Emmanuel Macron. They refer to that as the legend, so they introduce to the public the legend of their childhood, and essentially if you question the legend, you get called a racist or a transphobe, whatever it is, and the reality is, if we had real journalists, they would immediately be prodding those narratives and introducing to the public all of these discrepancies. It shouldn't be independent journalists like me that are doing it. Like I said, this was a massive blunder, a massive, massive blunder. I don't think it's an oversight. I think it was intentional because they just want people to think that she's part black. And in reality, my suspicion is that that may have just been somebody that was working for them and worked for them for a long time, maybe someone that was like family. But I just find it weird even that the dad said that they referred to her as like Miss Christie. Like, who calls their grandma Miss Christie? Like, who have you ever heard refers to their grandma as Miss anything? That also was a red flag to me. Like I said, we're at the beginning of this journey. We're not going to let this story go. We're going to continue to follow it to whatever rabbit hole it leads us down, because that is what it means to want to bring the truth to the public, being willing to go down any hole in order to find it. All right, guys, that's all we had.
She's clearly never been to a southern state before. Not
Right.
like proper deep south, like
Yeah.
Louisiana and shit.
Yeah.
Those areas, people, hell, sometimes people even refer to other people's grandmothers that live on the same street as, oh yeah, mama down there.
Yeah.
Like,
Or-
are you two related? Oh no, we
Yeah.
ain't related, but you know, she
had-
everybody mama.
Okay. So, my grandma, Mary, she had a best friend growing up.
Yeah.
She was her best friend from the time she lived on an island.
Yeah.
They grew up. They stayed besties. Like, they were literally the BFF.
Yeah.
Like, they were together through their marriages. Like, they were just the best of friends. Well, turned out her friend, once all of her kids were out of the house and, like, her husband was still working. And, like, she kept a clean house and stuff, but she was like, man, I need something else to do with my time.
Yeah.
So she got interested in genealogy.
Yeah.
In her own family genealogy. And she was like, where we grew up, I knew everybody.
Yeah.
You know? She's like, well, we had always called this lady Auntie.
Yeah.
My entire life. Like, I knew she was my grandma's best friend, but, like, she was always, you know, Auntie so-and-so. And I was like, okay. You know, me and my cousins, everybody in the family fucking called her Auntie. Well,
Yeah.
turned out they were actually family. She was a distant cousin. So, yeah. You know, so like... like, and because I mean, oh, island culture. I mean, you know, you've got like what, a few hundred, like maybe 100,000 people, maybe if you're lucky. Like it's usually much less than that. Everybody kind of knows everybody, and their families also were military.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, but they were military that had settled there.
Mm-hmm.
Like the girls, by the time they got into school, their fathers had retired.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, you know, I mean, and people mingle and shit. Like, but yeah, she found out, like, and she let everybody know.
Yeah.
She didn't try to hold it in. She was like, "You guys will not believe this." And yeah, she, you know, she gave it all out, and of course everybody was like, "Oh, well, that's cool."
Yeah.
You know, like, it turns out Auntie so and so is, you know, distant cousin so and so, but she's still Auntie so and so. You know, like,
Yeah.
yeah, like it changed nothing. It like I think it upped her status in the family a little bit because it was like, oh, all right,
Yeah.
we're not all wrong with this, but you know, but like I said, they were so close, it wouldn't have mattered even if she could find no direct link, and it wasn't even something that she was looking for.
Yeah.
It came up when she was like, you know, she did the chart. She showed us all. She's like, yeah, so we've got these two up here, and these two over here. She's like, and if you look, here's where the branches coincide here, here, and here.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you know, but like, even if she hadn't done that work, it wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, well, I mean, even in like the movie Crazy Rich Asians,
Yeah.
the characters in that movie, they call every older like lady auntie and every older man uncle.
Yeah.
That's normal in certain parts of the world.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, you know, if you've got like an older, like, yeah, even back in Jacksonville, like, you know, one of the rough neighborhoods we lived in, a lot of the neighbor kids referred to like your mom as Miss So and So.
Yeah.
You know, that's just a term of respect in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
And I have known folks from the islands that refer to the women in their family by their first name. It's not always, you know, like Aunt Jackie. It might be Miss Jackie or whatever, you know. And that caused me some confusion when I was a kid, and I would talk to them like, "Isn't that your mom's sister?" Well, yeah, but I've always called her Miss Jackie, so it's, you know, it's whatever. It's like, so, right, but what do I call her? If you're calling her Miss Jackie, you know, what the fuck do I call her? Like, oh, you call her Miss Jackie too? Okay. Do you see my confusion, man? Oh yeah, we don't bother with that, you know, we don't fuck with any of that like auntie uncle shit, you know, like yeah, just so yeah, like the only people who would not understand this and would choose to not understand this are fucking racists.
Yeah.
But yeah, right there in that clip, she cannot pull a Tucker or an Alex
No.
and say in court that she's just an entertainer.
Mm-hmm.
She can't do that.
No.
She said it on her Rumble stream, episode 71 of Candace.
Mm-hmm.
She called herself a journalist.
Yep.
She means for this shit to be taken seriously, and the Harris campaign has every right to sue her ass into the dirt if some lunatic fan of hers does something stupid or egregious.
Yep.
Okay, episode 72 now.
All right, guys, you can stop everything because this is officially the only podcast that you need to listen to today. Yesterday, I received an email from a woman all the way in New Zealand who decided to turn into Sherlock Holmes and fully dedicate herself to investigating Kamala Harris and all of these missing documents and all of these questions. And what she uncovered is potentially so shocking and so alarming that we can officially close the $1,000 bounty because she's earned it. I mean, she's going to receive the full 1K. Because this is now getting dark and twisted, and my suspicions about Kamala Harris potentially pretending that the help was her family maybe have been confirmed. I'm going to let you guys judge. Don't want to get way ahead of myself, but do not go away, and welcome back to Candace.
Okay, I shouldn't have to say it, but this is bullshit. Not that the person was in New Zealand doing all of this. I really don't care about that.
Yeah.
But Candace is insisting in this episode that Harris's great-grandmother, Miss Iris, was hired help and not actually her grandma, which is absurd and unprovable by almost any stretch right now. Candace goes on with her bullshit on this, acknowledging that her listeners have been submitting many different birth certificates that we know they could not have obtained overnight or even within the last few days of this noise. Apparently, there are a lot of different spellings floating around of Beryl's name on all of these submissions.
Damn.
Yeah. She goes on to claim that they have the marriage certificate, which they don't have, and so on.
Yeah.
It's more dragging up crap that they don't and can't have legally gotten their hands on, not just due to time, but also other factors that we already discussed. But there is an interesting twist here.
Also, the other thing that's getting me, right?
Yeah.
Her grandmother, her great-grandmother,
Yeah.
black.
Yeah. Both of them are.
Well, just
Both
running off
both
the
of the
fact
ladies
that,
on Donald Harris's
yeah,
parentage, Chrissy and Iris, both of them are black.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, just running off of the two of them.
Yeah.
Right. Then going down to the parents.
Yeah.
Okay, I know it's real specific on the level of I don't want to say blackness. That don't sound right, but
She's going to use it, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
on that level of things.
Let's call it percentage.
Yeah, percentage.
Okay.
That's even if say they were right. You know, like the father's got a white father or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. That still makes him 50%.
Yeah.
Which, if her mother is also, 50% Indian, 50% black.
Well, no, her mom's
Or-
Indian.
Okay,
Fully Indian, yeah.
All right. Well, nonetheless,
We'll get into that later on.
that
Yeah.
still leaves Kamala with like a 0.25%.
Yeah.
At
if,
the very least.
Yeah, if any of that was true, and it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If any of
Like-
that was true, it would still be a 0.25%, which is still
Well, that's
more
the thing
than
is
enough
that-
to claim.
Yeah, well, it would go a little ways towards explaining why Donald Harris has a lighter skin tone.
Yeah.
But what also goes towards explaining that is the fact that the man is a fucking academic.
Yeah.
I have known several black folks that were very dark, got desk jobs, and their skin tone lightened up over time.
Yeah.
That's just a natural thing. All I have to do is spend a few days in the sun,
Yeah.
and I get confused for a Hispanic guy.
Yeah.
Like we've talked about that before. But if I'm primarily inside for a month plus at a time, my shit lightens up as anybody's does.
Yeah. I mean, I got a native friend that lives up in Alaska,
Yeah.
and during the months of winter, he looks like a pasty ass white dude.
Yeah.
But during the months of not winter, as he puts it, because it's still fucking cold, of the months of not winter, he's tanner than a motherfucker.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he's just like, yeah, no, you don't see my native side until it's sunny out.
Yeah.
I'm like, isn't it also sunny in the winter? Yeah, but I'm not going out in the winter.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so like I said though, like the man is an academic.
Yeah.
And honestly, like if you look at his younger pictures, he has a darker skin tone.
Yeah, because he was likely spending more time outdoors.
Outdoors doing stuff.
Yeah.
Well, when he was in Jamaica,
Yeah, which
that's what his pictures with the girls are from when he was in Jamaica.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then you go to fucking Stanford or Princeton or wherever the fuck he was at.
yeah,
Yeah, it's in America. It's colder. You're indoors a lot of the time. When you're traveling, what are you doing? You're going from, fucking indoors to in a method of conveyance
yeah,
to another place indoors.
yeah. And if you're spending as much time as a Harvard or Princeton professor does
Yeah.
in one of those places, you're spending easily 12 hours of your day indoors and then only traveling during the dark hours.
Right. Dark when the world is dark when you walk into your office, and it's dark when you leave.
Yeah.
And you've been inside all fucking day.
Maybe a break for lunch, and that's
Yeah.
not enough time to develop any tanning.
No, like you might take a 15-minute break outside.
Yeah.
That's enough to get some vitamin D, before you get rickets. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, come on. But, yeah, I shouldn't have to say it. Yeah. Yeah. As I was saying, there is an interesting twist here.
So anyways, what happened was we sourced Beryl's birth certificate, and then my instinct got a little bit stronger because her name was spelled differently in the birth certificate, right? So you see that it says Beryl spelled Beril, Magdalene, and we know for a fact, by the way, so people that are submitting other birth certificates, this is definitively the correct birth certificate because it says Iris Finnegan. And we know based on Kamala and Kamala's father, Donald J. Harris, that Iris Finnegan is the mother of Beryl. And then we see that her name changes, the spelling of her name changes, rather, by the time that we looked at her marriage certificate. Suddenly you can see that the marriage certificate has her name being spelled with a Y. Now that to me signaled that maybe she definitely is the help, and I'll tell you why. So my grandfather, before he passed away, maybe like 10 years before he passed away, I got kind of obsessed with trying to find all of these documents pertaining to his life because I realized like that's my ancestry, and I was having a ton of trouble mining his grandmother's information because on each document her name was spelled differently as well as other people in the family, and I was like, Granddad, why is everyone's name spelled differently depending on the document? Like, this is very confusing. Why is it sometimes spelled Liza versus Eliza versus like Lizbeth? That was his grandmother's name. And he explained to me that they didn't know how to read and write. So you forget this. You forget that you had a world the majority of people couldn't read and write, especially if you were not considered like a high-class person. My grandfather grew up on a sharecropping farm, and so what that meant was even if you had a name, if you couldn't read and write, you were going up to the register, whether it was for birth, whatever it was, and you were just telling somebody the name. You weren't saying like, hi, it's Candace, C-A-N-D-A-C-E. You're just saying Candace, and one person might spell it C-A-N-D-I-S, somebody might spell it C-A-N-D-I-C-E. If you do not know how to read and write, you don't recognize these discrepancies. So that actually, I thought, was a good thing in terms of like my idea that this woman could have potentially just been the help, maybe like on my scent. But I didn't want to be too convinced. Obviously, you know, I lean into the conspiracy mindset because we've been lied to so many times.
Now, this is important. They were supposed to be wealthy. Candace would find it easy to use this scenario of poverty or illiteracy to try to prove that name misspellings don't matter on these things. But she has said previously, and will say later, that everyone involved here were from a wealthy family of slave owners. It simply isn't possible to have both been wealthy, educated, and illiterate to the point of misspelling names in this way. The whole thing falls apart in these details that she tries to blow past in her mad quest to avoid talking about the shit show that is Trump Vance, and in her inability to scope out basic facts. After this episode airs, I will be contacting authorities in Jamaica to report all of this bullshit. Because I don't think anyone is actually getting the forms and giving them to Candace or anyone else. But I find it just as damaging if they're out there falsifying documents and presenting them as real in a media that has millions of viewers and listeners. I'm waiting until after the episode airs at this point because I only have so much time in my day and I have to devote it to this first. If I get this done up and then have time, I'll start the process and let y'all know what I wrote or said. Candace goes on to detail the email that was sent to her in this episode, and knowing what we know about how one even gets their hands on birth, marriage, and death certificates from Jamaica, it sounds made the fuck up. The person that sent her all of this bullshit claimed to just find it all online. Doesn't say how or where, and she connects people that are gone, unnamed and unmentioned so far. It's fucking bullshit. Anyway, skipping through the rest of this noise, Candace goes on to note that they can't find Donald Harris's birth certificate. I would posit that it's because you have to pay for it and fill out proper paperwork and then wait. You also need all the right information because this is highly personal and sensitive information about a person. So much for the respect of privacy. Fucking unreal. Skipping through the rest of the garbage takes about 40 minutes off of the episode, which includes the comments this time.
I just thought about something.
Yeah.
They know who the fuck Donald Harris is, right?
Define they?
These people.
Yeah, this is all about his family legacy. Yes.
Yeah, okay. So
Or
what
his
you're telling
family
me
history, yes.
is they know about him,
Uh-huh.
which means they likely have pictures of him, right?
There's pictures of him in the book. Yeah. There's pictures of him
So
online.
so there's proof of him being a black man then.
Yeah, but what they're saying here is that we can't find his birth certificate. Yeah, because you have to pay $55 American, and you have to fill out all the information, and you have to wait.
Okay, I know these people's powers are the on the bullshit end of things. But like, why not just like pay the fee, wait the time, and then go? Okay.
Well, because the election is in a few weeks.
Right, yeah.
And if you didn't start your serious inquiry into the vice president's family,
I feel like the moment you spark the shit, like when God, I feel like one of them whenever I end up having to like stammer and stutter into my comprehending their stupidity.
welcome to my world. Yeah. I had to listen to all this.
So you've had time
I even
to...
listen to the ads. Do you know what I do a lot of times though?
Huh?
Like I'll have it on as I'm driving, right? I'm driving somewhere and I've got my map screen up. There's a lot of times where I will press the app button for Podcast Addict on my car screen
Yeah.
because I'm like, how much more of this do I have to listen to? And I will realize I'm only 10 minutes deep into like a 45-minute episode. And I'm like, what the fuck? How has the time stretched? Why? But I don't listen to it while I'm actually like working, while I'm actually like shopping and shit. I don't listen to them then because the app I have to use for my job already infuriates the fuck out of me.
Yeah.
Having to deal with conditions in a store, a random ass store, already plus
Infuriates.
already plus the app is already enough anger. I don't need that shit in my ears.
Yeah.
But when I'm driving, I'm fine. So I can.
Yeah.
I get the rage that the road doesn't give to me. Yeah.
See, something that... Okay, previous job, retail,
Yeah.
as most retail jobs now have an online shopping department.
Yeah.
They really wanted me in there because I helped them out a couple of times.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I have the amazing ability to go, how do I do this?
Yeah.
Okay. How do I do this? Okay.
Uh-huh.
And then do the job well enough, and I'm like, am I dragging out the time long enough
Yeah.
to seem like I'm not good at this job? Because I really fucking hated it.
Yeah.
I knew what it had done to previous coworkers and to some friends
Yeah.
of mine. I mean, Pete's sake, when you walk into the department and you see the manager bawling her eyes out
Yeah.
to your store manager, it's a little difficult to not go, I don't want to work in this department.
Right.
And they really wanted me over there. Well, I was sitting there and I contemplated it for a minute. And I looked at the one manager that's now over there, and I look at her and I go, okay, can I wear earbuds while I do this? It's the only way that this is going to be
Yeah.
even semi-enjoyable to me,
Yeah.
is if I can listen to my music. She goes, no. And I looked at her and I said, okay, I'm not working back here anymore.
Yeah.
Because I'm not subjecting myself to go shopping for another person to find the right God.
Yeah.
Do you have to like take pictures or like scan barcodes and shit?
Constantly.
Yeah. We had a nifty little like scanner gun device
Yeah.
thing for it, but like it's still irritating because you're sitting there and you're looking at like 16 different cans of soup, and you're like, oh, there's low fat chow mein. I'll say.
Yeah.
I don't think chow mein comes in a can, but
Yeah. Chow mein noodles do. Actually, you're not off.
God
Chow
damn
mein.
it.
Okay. Chow mein is actually sold in stores that carry it. I haven't seen it in our major stores here. That might not be true. Cub might have it. Chow mein is typically sold as a 2-item thing.
Okay.
The bottom is a can about the size of a Dinty Moore can.
Okay.
Okay. The top can is the crispy chow mein noodles.
Oh, okay. So you buy the soup in the
Yeah.
can. Okay.
So like you would heat up the soup in, whatever vessel.
Yeah, and then
You serve it out to yourself and you put the noodles on top. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So yeah, that is sold in a can
Yeah.
of 2.
Well,
Yes.
in this
Or you can
regard-
but in a lot of stores though, you can just buy the chow mein noodles directly.
well, yeah,
Yeah, and they're pretty cheap. They're disturbingly cheap.
Yeah, for like a good bag of them. I once bought a whole bag of chow mein noodles because I was like, I really want some chow mein noodles, and I
Yeah.
just sat in the break room just eating fists full of them.
Yeah, that's normal.
But now they're staring at a wall of fucking suits, and you go,
Yeah.
"Oh, there's low-fat chow mein." You grab it and you scan it, and your
Yeah.
scanner gun goes. And you're like, "What the fuck do you mean this isn't the right low-fat, gluten-free chow? What the fuck?"
yeah.
And you put it up and you
Yeah.
go, "Oh, there's something that says gluten-free on it." So you grab it. Oh, it's not low-fat. It's high-fat. What the fuck is this shit?
It's regular. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that is basically what I do for a living that pays the bills for the
Yeah.
last 5 fucking
See,
years.
and here's the other thing. If it came with a pay bump, I'd probably actually do it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't come with a pay bump.
See, that's fucked up. That's why.
They keep me... They would have kept me at my fucking cashier.
Well, you know what
rate.
happens. You know what happens with that, right?
What?
People do that.
Yeah.
This happens at Target too. This is why for a long time Target wouldn't accept shipped shoppers that applied that were also currently Target employees.
Yeah.
Because what happens is people do that and they see how easy it can be.
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, if I can make this much more money doing Instacart or Shipped or whatever, why don't I just go do that? You know,
Yeah.
fuck this retail noise. Because, yeah, you know, like, I easily make like 3 times what any retail worker does. But it's
Yeah.
because I know how to game the system.
Yeah.
You know, I know how to follow my intuition to go, I'm not going to work for that person. Like I've got one person that I have put, I actually have it in my notes for their address. I put them on ice
Yeah.
until like mid-November. Because I was doing a lot of work for them,
Yeah.
but their tips were going down, trickling
Yeah.
down. And I was like, you know what? They need to experience some other shoppers for a while. They need to remember why they like me. So I'm just gonna put them on fucking ice. I'm their top guy.
Yeah.
I'm always gonna know when they're ordering shit. But they need to. I need to step away for 6 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah.
I decided that at the start of October. 'Cause I was like, you know, I'm looking at my history with them, and I was like, you know what? I got to do this. I don't do that all the time to people. I've only done that to 4 customers in 5 years, but every single one of them,
Yeah.
when I start taking their orders again, they remember why they like me. And the money goes back where it belongs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, especially in this case, not kidding, every home in this neighborhood where they are, every home at a minimum is $3 million.
Yeah, I think you've told me about the houses.
One of them is a $6 million mansion
Yeah.
that I won't fuck with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
So, let's get into episode 73.
Well, where should we begin? You guys have heard of whitewashing history, but have you heard of blackwashing? Blackwashing is when you're a politician and it's election season and suddenly you have to relate to black people. So you just sort of start making stuff up to blackify yourself, your history. You start dropping a bunch of slang and colloquialisms and hoping that the people will therefore understand you. Honestly, it's become something of a democratic rite of passage. Except this time, I think we may have caught the culprit red-handed. Of course, I'm speaking about Kamala Harris. I think her and her campaign team are really going to regret the day that their media henchmen came for Janet Jackson. Welcome back to Candace.
Yeah, so she brings up the whole Janet Jackson thing so many times, I'm honestly sparing this audience from it a lot. The way she defends these people is so star-fuckery that I honestly am fine never hearing their music again, and I was a fan of both Janet and Michael. But if Candace is going to do this shit, and Janet has gotten so suggestible in her life that she thinks or puts it out there that Kamala is white of all things, then as much as I sometimes like to separate art from the artist, I gotta back the fuck away on this one.
Yeah.
Anyway, Candace goes on to talk more about her issues with the one piece that the otherwise reserved Donald Harris wrote about his family, and she gets into the conspiracy bullshit about Kamala's ancestors more, and it's just more of the same running around with incomplete papers and not making any definitive statements. She is at least using newspaper clippings to try to prove her points now, but she's doing so in a way that doesn't entirely prove what she is saying. The fact is, Harris is a very common surname in Jamaica. I was wrong. I said it was 37 earlier. It's actually the 57th most common family name overall.
Yeah.
The top three are Brown, Williams, and Smith. Okay, so I had a couple of those wrong earlier, but, it's in the script.
That's
But
why you
Brown-
write this shit down,
yeah.
so that way, you end up revisiting it eventually.
Yeah.
Can correct.
So the top three are Brown, Williams, and Smith. About 9,700 people have the name of Harris in Jamaica. Currently alive, 9,700. So, her just using newspaper clippings with similar named persons isn't really proof of her many assertions. She spends about 18 minutes on it, then moves on to Diddy stuff. She does mention that rapper 50 Cent has a documentary series about Diddy coming out soon, which is real.
Oh.
I expect it to actually be truthful.
Wait. Yeah, no, sorry, I'm getting my rappers mixed up. I thought 50 Cent was the one that got shot and killed. He's just the one that got shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Had a video game about it called Bulletproof. Yeah. Yep. You play Curtis 50 Cent Jackson.
He has a SNL skit. At least it's Eminem's SNL skit.
Okay.
Where he's talking about giving somebody a shot.
Yeah.
And he goes, I've got to give you a shot. And 50 Cent walks past him and goes, I got shot 9 times. And he just goes, weird flex, but okay.
Right. So yeah. Anyway, we're skipping the rest of what she has to say about that and her takes on transgender culture in hip-hop and more Diddy stuff. I hope he gets whatever is coming to him, but for now, it's filed under celebrity bullshit. Not touching it. Unrelated, she goes on to talk about Alex Jones a bit, running cover for the asshole.
Before we get into your comments, guys, I just also want to mention this Alex Jones InfoWars thing. A judge has now officially approved auctions liquidating all of Alex Jones's assets to pay the Sandy Hook families. And in case you haven't been following this, Alex Jones has been fighting a court battle, and essentially he was sued for defamation. He was covering the Sandy Hook shooting. And what he specifically said to me is not at root here. It's the fact that he owes more than $1 billion.
$1.5
$1 billion.
Fucking hell.
And obviously he can't afford to pay $1 billion to the Sandy Hook family, so they're liquidating all of his businesses. Now, most people, when they heard the story, were like, this is so disgusting. I'm against Alex Jones, that, these families were being harassed because of conspiracy theories that he was spinning. And I want you to first and foremost take a more nuanced take for a couple of reasons. The first thing is to recognize the lies that the media has told us. Let's just do a snapshot over the last 5 years that have impacted people's lives, and you have never seen a lawsuit like this, right? I'm talking big lies, like lies that have torn apart families, lies that allowed you to have your mother die alone in a hospital because of what they were telling you about COVID. Lies, maybe you were one of the people who lost a family member, a young son or a young daughter, because they suffered from myocarditis and had heart issues and died, suffered from heart issues, myocarditis, and died after they got the vaccine because you trusted the media. We've never seen the media held to that particular standard. So when you see people that are commenting on this case, it's not because they agree with what Alex Jones said or what Alex Jones did. It's because they are realizing this incredible exception and wondering why it is that the media gets away with lying to us virtually all the time, and those lies have real-world impact on our lives. And yet for Alex Jones, they wanted to make sure that they could crush his empire. Now, the other thing that I want to mention to you is that, parking aside the case, one of the reasons that Alex Jones was speaking about this and speaking about school shootings, and this is something that obviously if you've read the book Chaos you are aware of, but it is a fact. So do not think that it is a conspiracy. It is a fact that our government implemented very sadistic, evil programs trying to control people's minds to get them to commit crimes. That's just a fact. That's a historical fact. You can look this up on Google in your spare time. learn about the MK Ultra program, learn about how the feds were turning people into candidates. And like I said, when you read that book, Chaos, it's about the Charles Manson story. What you didn't know is that Charles Manson was a federal asset, and he was given drugs, and he was instructed on what to do, and he was protected by the feds for a very long time. And so that is something that I just think we need to come to terms with, is that what sometimes happens is that when people suspect these things more broadly, and there have been other cases, by the way, I want to say Timothy McVeigh, I jotted them down, I'm just going to find this really quickly, of people who were involved with the feds that went on to commit crimes. We have, who's the person? Is it Timothy McVeigh that I'm thinking of, you guys? Ted Kaczynski, that's right, who was also involved, Timothy McVeigh, and you don't realize that so many of these cases that you remember hearing about, of these tragic murders that took place or tragic events that took place, the feds were in fact involved. They had a near obsession in the 1960s and the 1970s with seeing whether or not they could condition someone's mind to turn them into a freak, a killer, somebody that could mass control people, which was what Charles Manson specialized in. The hippie commune was fundamentally, as that book implicates, protected by the feds. They knew that they were distributing drugs. They knew that he was brainwashing them. They allowed this to take place because it was a part of their broader operation. So also separate that and know that when people are introducing those aspects, or people suspect that this could be what the government is doing, it is based on a historical understanding of things that have happened in the past. Again, I am not at all agreeing with anything that Alex Jones said. I just wanted to remark that this is why there has been so much outrage about it, is because there have been so many things that our media has said that have been dishonest, that have lied to us, that have cost real lives, and yet there was this kind of real focus on taking down Alex Jones. And I don't agree with what the families had to go through, potentially because of his rhetoric, but I also don't agree with a $1 billion lawsuit on the back end of that obviously no person could plausibly afford to pay. So I just wanted to comment on that. All right, guys, we're going to get into your comments, particularly.
I mean, there are certain people in this world that could afford to pay that.
Yeah.
Primarily the ones smart enough not to say shit like that.
Yeah.
Also, the she was real good about covering her own ass there at the end of.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, I don't agree with anything that he said, but
Yeah. I think maybe she found out the hard way that there's going to be an actual auction of InfoWars assets, including the desk from the studio.
why would
There's a big push on Reddit right now for Dan and Jordan from Knowledge Fight to get the InfoWars desk. Because Dan mentioned that he wants it, I think. People are like, how can we make this happen? It would be great.
Yeah.
It would be great. Some of their listeners, I think, have that kind of money to swing that. But yeah, as far as I'm aware, it's going to be like an internet auction.
Yeah.
So like it's possible.
It would be hilariously
It would be
amazing
great
if
if-
somebody like just puts in the money to go, this is happening. Hey Dan, here's a new desk.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing to me is like if they could make that work.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, really, any of the InfoWars assets going to Knowledge Fight would be appropriate,
Yeah.
if nothing else. Even just like one of the signs to have like on a wall,
Yeah.
you know, like one of the signs from The Office. But yeah, so that was a ramble. Just to remind everyone, Alex Jones sent people he hired and InfoWars listeners to harass the families that lost their children in the shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary because he called the entire Twisted incident a hoax. He went on for the next 2 years to defend his stance on the issue, and he still does it today. And this caused the families so much pain that they often moved far away, changed their names, and they were still getting harassed by his people and fans because he wouldn't just shut the fuck up. Even after being handed his ass by the court, he spent money on lavish vacations rather than to start putting money toward the family's funds to start paying this massive debt, which I will remind everyone, he lost due to the very bad lawyering he got from an attorney that repped Candace when her family sued the Stamford Public Schools, Norm Pattis. The lawyers that repped them all in Texas and in Connecticut did the work for free for the families. Candace can fuck right off with garnering any sympathy for that fucking monster. But it has been my stance for a few months now that she is going to buy the InfoWars assets for her own studio. What?
Didn't he also get like a fucking pizzeria practically burnt down? Because
that was Pizzagate. That was Pizzagate. That's something else.
Okay.
Yeah, no, here's the deal with Pizzagate and Alex Jones' involvement in that. He ran the story of Pizzagate.
Okay.
And then one of his reporters, I don't remember who it was right now, but one of his reporters went to Comet Pizza in D.C.
Yeah.
and was filming a hidden video there.
Yeah.
And they asked him to leave.
Mm-hmm.
The manager was actually very cool about it. They covered all of this on Knowledge Fight a few times, but yeah, like he wanted to see a basement or whatever, and they're like, we don't have a basement. Like, what the fuck? Yeah. So, yeah, no, the pizzeria wasn't like burned down, but it did get shot up by a guy who went there with a semi-automatic rifle in order to liberate the children that were being held in the basement that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I find it more believable that what was it, the subplot line in Preacher when the Catholic Church gets their hands on Cassidy, and they realize that they can just repeatedly take off his foreskin and turn it into baby lotion and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
They put it into your facial lotions.
So, yeah, even if Candace bought all the InfoWars Studios shit, it wouldn't pay Alex's entire set of bills. But I think she sees the value in keeping him close and being loyal, at least for as long as it might take to get what she needs. That's just a theory, a feeling. I have nothing to back it up, aside from her saying many times that they are working to get a studio again, and he has one for sale, and they are relatively close. It just makes a certain sort of sense.
Yeah.
But skipping ahead to her comment section, she starts talking about a subject she doesn't really understand at all.
Alrighty, I'm excited to see your comments. This is going to be crazy. Kimberly Hall writes, how can I ask you more in-depth questions? I have so many. I definitely want to know more about unions as well because I'm very involved in my union. I don't know if I should leave. The history of unions in this country is quite dark. It's funny because I was just speaking to somebody who grew up in the Soviet Union, and it is a fact that we took over a ton of Russian immigrants, and those Russian immigrants were, some of them, just true psychopaths that supported communism, and they established the unions right away. More in-depth questions you can ask me. I'm on the Minect app, actually, MINNECT, the Minect app, and people can message me there, and I'm able to answer their questions individually. Play it out.
She doesn't really understand unions at all. The closest thing to this was when in 1908 a group of Russian refugees from the failed Russian Revolution of the time escaped to New York City, and they started a union of Russian workers. They did lean towards communism at first, but they eventually embraced a more anarchist type of ideology. The organization aligned itself with the union known as the International Workers of the World, or the IWW, but the advent of the Red Scare in 1919 to 1920 in America led to many of them being deported back to Russia. At the time, the organization was about 10,000 people strong, but only less than 1,000 workers were actually deported. Most of them changed their names, moved, and kept low profiles. What Candace and other fascists don't want to recognize is that unions mostly start naturally when people realize that there are more of them than the people at the top, and they use their sense of community to make conditions better overall. Unfortunately, managers and company owners tend to stomp on unions, and the history of that is horrific, because they often do so with the blessing of the state in past times. Here in Minneapolis, a grocery workers' union began in the early to mid-20th century when workers had just enough of long hours and low pay. Governor Olson used the National Guard to start crushing the strikes as workers would crowd around grocery delivery trucks and try to stop them from making deliveries either into or from the warehouses. They did it enough that it affected operations, and the National Guard came in and shot a bunch of workers at one strike and killed several of them. The backlash on the governor's office led to a massive union acceptance effort and a further Democrat stronghold on Minnesota. This is one of the most union-friendly states in the country, and our local unions cover many types of workers and jobs beyond the trades. It's one reason why companies like Target and Costco pay as well as they do here, because they have to compete with what unionized workers make at the competitors. These unions are far and away from being communist organizations, as they often want to work with the businesses their workers are in for the benefit of everyone. The business wins if it is a retailer by having motivated employees, and the employees win by having job security as long as they're doing their fucking jobs. The same goes for unions in other sectors in the best of times. But people like Candace, fascists, don't see the value in unions. Her telling that woman to reach out to her via Monect is really something else, and we discussed Candace's rates on Monect before. It starts with just $100 to ask her a question over text, and then it spirals upward from there. It's fucking gross. Anyway, up next is a lie I expect to hear more about as we get closer to Election Day.
Also, she couldn't pay somebody $1,000 reward money, but, you know, she's getting questions from fucking Monect.
At $100 a pop.
She couldn't afford to pay somebody fucking $1,000 in one go?
Wanted to split it up.
Yeah.
Wanted to split it up rather than just being like, you know what? I appreciate all of this information. You get $1,000. You get $1,000.
Yeah, just Oprah that shit.
Yeah, but no. You know? So, I expect to hear more about this as we get closer to Election Day on November 5th.
Play It Out writes, Black Panther writes, Candace, do you think the 2020 election was rigged? 100%. I will never change my mind on that. And for everyone who is too much of a coward to make that statement, I resent you. I really resent people who are too much of a coward to simply say what we all know in our hearts to be true. It was nothing but funny business. They used COVID as an excuse to fundamentally change the way that we vote and to pretend that it was totally normal for them to just shut down counting votes in the middle of the night, and then we all woke up and it was an entirely different election result.
No vote counting stopped during the night on Election Day in 2020. At most, in a few districts, it was paused because the election counters ran out of votes to count and had to wait for the next set to come in. This is another repeated lie these fuckwads tell us often, which is simply untrue. Moving on to episode 74.
All right, guys, happy Friday. Well, if we've learned anything this week, it's that the media should have just left Janet Jackson alone. That really is the lesson. That really is the moral. I didn't want to be doing this. I told my husband I was going to chill for the rest of the year because we've had enough excitement this year. Fired, banned from YouTube. I was like, I'm just going to relax. But then the media came out and tried to paint Janet Jackson as mentally unbalanced, and I'll be honest, something came over me. I was just like,
Yeah, okay.
and so here we are. Welcome back to Candace.
The fuck is that even supposed to mean? That's like men's deodorants and having fucking concepts on them. She was shocked and then decided to, fucking jazzercise?
Well, here's the thing, right? Here's the fucking thing. Yeah, I told him we were just going to chill for the rest of the year. Really, your side is deep in the shit in this election cycle. And you're just going to chill. You were just going to chill. Really.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking lies. She can't even... Okay, so there is an important election going on, and she was just going to chill and take it easy. Sure, fuck ever. Candace had planned to do this insanely racist, baited thing since Kamala was announced as the candidate. Blaming it on Janet Jackson is stupid and low, and I know it's probably not going to happen, but I'd like to see Janet publicly distance herself from Candace Owens. Candace then starts her bullshit and murder board bullshit up again. Yeah, I wrote that twice. I fucking hate it. I want to remind everyone that even though she's doing a lot of episodes about Kamala's family, she has little to nothing to go on. She is working off of documents uploaded in various ways on various sites, some of which I found easily. I'll include one such site. There's no paywall, but we are skipping the family bullshit again because Candace is twisting all of this to not only suit her own version of the family history, but also to avoid talking about Trump and Vance being called out even by Fox News for their many blatant lies. She does say something that I feel is worth pushing back on in the broader scope of pushing back on her lies and the general lies of her ilk. And I'm including the link. The links that we're including are going to be in the full episode that will be up the Saturday after this is recorded and up after all of the 5 parts have come out over the week. But the site is from findmypast.com. Anyway, moving on.
But here is something that we do know about Donald Terrace. We know for a fact that Donald Terrace was a committed communist. And what do we know about communists in general? Communists change their identities the entire time. They steal identities and they change their name. That is like a witchcraft that they have perfected. Historically speaking, every major communist figure that you know changed their name. They don't use their real names. Joseph Stalin was not Joseph Stalin. Vladimir Lenin was not Vladimir Lenin. Pol Pot was not Pol Pot. A good commie knows that you have to change your identity and continually change your identity. Here's my theory, okay? And again, now we are speculating. We are in the theory zone, so these are not backed by facts. And I'm going to continue to look, and I'll debunk my own theory if I come across different evidence. But
Bullshit.
My gut is telling me that Donald Harris is simply lying about who he is. I'm not even convinced that he is Kamala's father at all. Because as I said, the lie has to be so big that it was worthy of her changing who her grandparent was in the storyline. What is it that she's hiding? Kamala also looks a little too much like her grandmother. Do you kind of get where I'm going with this? I'm going to show you this picture of Kamala with who we are told is her mother, Shyamala Goplin. Shyamala, again, if you're looking for documents pertaining to her, don't use Shyamala. But this is just a picture of Shyamala in her youth, and we're going to...
What? Oh, if you're looking for documents pertaining to this person, don't use their fucking name. No, that's ridiculous. Why would you look for somebody's documentation via their name? We all know this one, Candace. Come on, I thought you were a jerk. Fuck you. God, okay.
So,
also, that she looks too much like her grand...
Hold on. I'm going to explain that.
Which grandmother, though?
I'm going to explain that. Neither of the ones that you've seen photos of. And not... Yeah. She has asserted, to this point, to the point that we've gotten here,
Yeah.
what I have not bothered even fucking with because it's bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
She asserts that some other woman entirely was one of Kamala's real grandmothers. Not the ones that have been presented. And she has a much lighter skin tone. She's still, I would say, pretty much a black lady, but she has like a much lighter skin tone. She has much lighter skin tone in a single photo.
Yeah.
That could have been photoshopped.
And been an old camera or something along those lines, because those can also tend to lighten up.
Yeah, like there's like I said, but she's alleging that this woman is one of Donald Harris's real parents. And if she were Donald Harris's real grandparent, he would have a different name.
Mm-hmm.
All of it has no backing in reality whatsoever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just...
with this, you get the general idea of what I have been skipping.
Yeah.
First, she is correct about those 3 men, Stalin, Lenin, and Pol Pot, having changed their names from their birth names. Stalin, Lenin, and Pol Pot grew into those names over their revolutionary careers. Lenin, according to record... Oh, but before I get into this, Candace Owens has not always been Candace Owens in the media.
No.
When she started, she went by the name Red Pill Black.
What?
That was her original YouTube name. Was Red Pill Black. That was the original name of her channel. She didn't give up her name. She didn't give up her name until someone doxed her.
Okay.
And then, you can really only dox somebody once.
Yeah. Unless they're a good commie, apparently.
Yeah, well, just wait for it.
Okay.
So, Lenin, according to record, went through 146 different names during his time writing revolutionary works as he evaded the Tsar's police.
It sounds about right.
And Stalin also changed his name during the revolution.
Yeah.
Because he wanted to be known as the Man of Steel. Stalin,
Yeah.
Man of Steel, yeah.
Very.
So it is thought also that Pol Pot changed his name to avoid being associated with his family for various reasons. But outside of revolutions, there is often no reason to change one's given name. You can see this after the establishment of the Soviet government. People who weren't revolting against it had no reason to change their names.
Yeah.
And before anyone calls these types of people cowards, our own founding fathers in America did the same shit in the period leading up to and during the Revolutionary War.
Yeah.
All of them. They were publishing open items or ideas or writing to one another used pseudonyms. It's common because most of the time, these people are dealing with life and death matters. Hell, we're using pseudonyms on this show to avoid the kind of violent idiots that actually want to listen to Candace from coming after us.
Yeah. I mean, whenever you're dealing with anything pertaining to a revolution,
Yeah.
Considering all of the societies that they were in reference revolting to,
Yeah.
The moment that they catch the revolter, they turn them into an example by hanging them in the middle of town or shooting them however they choose to
Or their
execute.
families.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, when you're revolting, you tend to like to make sure that nobody knows your actual fucking names. That way, you don't get killed or get your family or friends killed because they were associated with you.
Yeah.
Clearly,
Well-
she doesn't know how to revolt correctly.
No. But more to the point of what she's saying here, Donald J. Harris has only ever gone by his birth name. And he is not a communist. He has drawn inspiration for his economic models from Marx and several others, including capitalist authors, but has never promoted Marx, Lenin, or any of the others in his economic models as being a sole source of inspiration. He is a very smart man that has realized that a singular approach to economy often leads to disaster of the idea presented or disaster of the society is trying to serve. No single modality of economy is going to apply all the time to benefit of the most people. But since his work has mostly been on bringing up economies like Jamaica, places that are former colonies trying to do better for their people than the colonizers did, he has to look at and consider different approaches because educated persons often have to solve problems from all angles. Just throwing people into capitalism leads them back into a form of slavery, usually economic, as we saw happen in the American South after the failed Reconstruction period. Candace should know this to be evident since her grandfather grew up as a sharecropper on the farm that his family was slaves to in the Civil War.
Yeah.
And her grandmother lived on an island wrecked by various economic forces, but they both made a life in a relatively better area in Stamford, Connecticut. So this is fucking ridiculous. A lot of Donald Harris's work is public. It's academic and dense, but it's not communist. She gets into Diddy some more, and it's nothing that isn't publicly available. But then we get into comments.
Crazy writes, I'm from California and have witnessed Kamala Harris's political rise, and it's 100% true that she never claimed being half black. Yes, you can even go back, by the way, on Wikipedia entries and confirm this. It was just never a thing, and then it was a thing. So it's just really bizarre. And like I said, if I find a single black person, after I have unveiled this and shown who her maybe mommy grandma is, if I catch you voting for her or saying something like the first black female president, I'm going to personally find you. And I'm going to give you a no fives and a noogie. like an old school 90s noogie in the head, and there's going to be nothing you can do about that. That's what's going to happen. Let me find one black person who says that. You hear me? You hear me right now. So she never claimed she was half black. Every time she gained a new higher office, every story about her and interview she did always touted her as the woman of Indian descent that holds that office, including when she was elected to the U.S. Senate. Yes, now I'm wondering, I'm going to have to really, over the weekend, do her genealogy. I'll do some, mock-ups, if Oscar and Vioris, and Vioris is really Miss Iris, are actually her parents, what would that make her genetically? And it's majority Irish, exactly what Janet Jackson said. Also, who is Donald Harris? We just need to get to the bottom of this, guys. Anna J writes, hey, Candace, Jamaican here. You're definitely right. And once you said St. Elizabeth, I was like, yup, Vioris is definitely white. St. Elizabeth was mostly occupied by European settlers. And even today, most of our mixed race mulatto or lighter Jamaican people are from St. Elizabeth. Hope this helps. Yes, this helps. But Anna J, I'm going to need you to walk down to the county clerk's office. Okay. I need you looking up. I need you to find Christopher Harris. This is not enough. This comment is not enough, Anna J. I'm going to need you, if you are within striking distance of St. Elizabeth, to get down there. I'm going to need you walking graveyards and cemeteries, taking pictures, photos, emailing me at info@candace.com. Okay? You have now been selected to be one of our detectives that is on the ground in Jamaica. Do I have to go to Jamaica? Do I have to go to Jamaica? I mean, my family's from St. Thomas. I mean, if I have to go down there and personally start walking through cemeteries, I will. I'm not above that. In fact, that's exactly where I want to be. Great food in Jamaica. I've never been there, but I know that I love Jamaican food. So we'll see what happens. Lastly, we have this individual, Trake Spree, I hope I'm saying that correctly, who writes, isn't it strange how Kamala only talks about her mother growing up, but she never mentions her father in her stories? Yes! Exceedingly strange. Like I said, it's always the dog that's not barking. She never wants to talk about her dad. It's like she doesn't really know him. It's like they just gave her a dad. And like I said, commies know how to change their identity. That is what they do best. I never trust a person that changes their name a bunch of times. We should have known what was up with Diddy. Puff Daddy, Diddy, the D, the I, the D.
Yay?
Yeah. Yay. Yeezy. Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Jesus. That's just.
Did he actually go for Yeezus?
I think he did at one point.
Don't
quote me on that, internet. I don't give enough of a shit about Kanye to care.
I mean, I'd have a tad bit more respect if he actually tried to go for Yeezus.
I know he fancied himself a preacher for a while there.
See, Yeezus the preacher.
Yeah,
it works.
Yeezy, yeah.
But God, before you go shitting on people that change their names all the time, maybe remember who your friends are.
Yeah. So, first, Kamala has claimed her Black and Indian heritages extensively. She also attended and got her degree from historically Black University, Howard College. The way she was raised, she has discussed many times that her mother raised her and her sister Maya as Black and encouraged them in that regard, knowing that is how the world would perceive them. They spent summers in Jamaica with their father and his family. She has also said that her and her father have a good but distant relationship, which, with people in his generation, is pretty fucking common, more so if he was just summer dad in the decades before social media and cheap communications. But during his political rise, she made herself be known as both Black and Indian, including letting herself be known as both when she won her Senate seat during her political rise. Anyway.
Fuck, wasn't one of her big sellers as vice president the fact that she was
Black and Indian?
Yeah, a young and Black Indian woman being vice president. I remember that.
Yeah, and when Biden said that his running mate, he was going to pick someone who was female and ethnically diverse, I knew immediately. I was like, oh, it's going to be Kamala.
Yeah.
And I mean, I said that. I was like, he's going to pick Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
And then he did, and I was like, yeah, see? Mm-hmm. Because she fit the bill of everything.
Yeah.
And she already had, executive experience being a senator and, having been a prosecutor and shit. She fit a lot of the brackets that just made sense as a successor. And they always, they always say, someone's going to kill Biden. It's like, yeah, well, not if Kamala is going to step right into the role, because anyone that would want to kill him is going to be fucking afraid of her, like Trump. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So,
because the only person to step in after her would be Walls, and none of them want him in the spot.
no, they really don't. He's more extreme. Yeah. Yeah, but anyway, all of that's fucking garbage. As for the person claiming to be from St. Elizabeth, the native people that lived there were largely displaced by enslaved Africans when the British established the sugarcane plantation industry there. But, excuse me, other Europeans gradually moved in over time, but not in swollen numbers. It is a mostly black but diverse population there, and this has long been known as the most diverse place in Jamaica. Lots of cultures. Like our fair city Minneapolis or St. Paul, where we have an immense and diverse population of many different cultures. Mm-hmm. Some I didn't even know about until we moved here.
Like the Hmong.
Yeah, the Hmong culture, yeah.
Yeah, like, I'll be honest, I didn't even know about them until I went to the state fair with a friend and we took the sky ride.
Yeah.
And we saw in the distance at the concert area, Hmong something. I don't remember what the rest of it was,
Yeah.
but just the Hmong thing. I was sitting there and I'd never seen the word, and I just see H Hmong, and I'm like, Hung, Hung, and she's like, no, that's Hmong.
It's a small Asian community outside of America,
Yeah,
but they kind of have a thriving community here.
yeah.
You know.
They're apparently really big, and now I know about that, but I still haven't. I don't think we've gone anywhere that's.
We haven't, because half the people in this house can't handle pork.
And that's their primary.
That's their primary.
That makes sense.
Yeah, although they're we might hit up. I know where there's a Hmong sausage maker.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they're highly rated.
Oh, I bet.
Oh yeah, yeah. I haven't had their stuff yet, but we can take a trip down there one day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that comment from her listener, or whatever, was also bullshit. But Candace saying all that shit about her listener being her agent there in Jamaica. Is Candace going to pay the fees for the clerk's office to produce or not produce papers for this listener?
Mm-hmm.
I doubt it. Mostly because the shit they're all talking here is incorrect and supposition and wouldn't get you the forms in the first fucking place. Ridiculous. Moving on to episode 75.
All right, guys, happy Monday. Let's get right into this. I think that President Trump has been watching the Candace Show because he randomly posted this on Truth Social over the weekend. He wrote, "There's something wrong with Kamala. I just don't know what it is, but there is something missing and everybody knows it." Yeah, that's a really fancy way of saying I've been watching Candace's episodes, 70 through 75, and I am at the edge of my seat. We all are, Mr. President. This is really turning into quite the scandal, and we are on top of it. I've gone through so many emails, and it just gets crazier and crazier. Plus, is LeBron James ducking smoke from Candace Owens? Because that's what former NBA player Kwame Brown thinks, and I'm going to tell you guys why. All of that coming up right now on Candace.
No. She also goes on to talk about Michael Jackson again for some reason. This is 4 minutes long.
A lot of interesting trends happening on X over the weekend, and I've come to the conclusion that maybe the ghost of Michael Jackson is haunting Kamala, because there have been some really old clips that are now surfacing, and it's essentially depicting the Kamala versus Donald Trump discussion pertaining to the Michael Jackson case. Now, I know a lot of you guys are new listeners to the show. We've gained a lot of new listeners over the last week, so in case you are like me and did not remember any details about the Michael Jackson case, all you remembered was the media telling you incessantly that he was a pedophile, I highly recommend that you go back and revisit our episode 55, which we did looking into the Michael Jackson case. It is stunning. Michael Jackson was without question being set up by some very powerful executives because he was fighting for control over Sony. It is completely crazy about how the cases even came about. Literally, the first person who ever made an allegation against Donald Trump was drugged into the allegation by his own father. I'm talking about that crazy and that his father eventually killed himself. It's nuts. It's nuts. Anyways, at the time that all these accusations were coming up, it was very much the media versus Michael Jackson because obviously the record execs had a lot of power over the media. They controlled the media at that time. Same story it is today, and why there are certain people who are protected. And so at that time, they were going around asking a lot of powerful people what their opinions were on the Michael Jackson case. And one of those people who was asked was Kamala Harris, then the deputy city attorney in San Francisco. And here's what she had to say.
That could mean life in prison. And cases like this can depend on the testimony of the child accuser.
In general, the child will be able to recall and recollect with some detail the incident, and that is persuasive to a jury, even if it is the only testimony that is available.
Ooh, betting against Michael Jackson, who was eventually acquitted of all charges. But what's really stunning is when you juxtapose this to what Donald Trump said at the time, then just a real estate magnate. Take a listen.
Michael's been a long-time resident of Trump Tower, and last night the Donald strongly reiterated his defense of Jackson with Larry King by going after the accuser's mother.
She's had plenty of experience at going after people. And she goes after him viciously and violently, and I saw a story and I read another story about some of the things she's done, and I don't believe it.
But you know what it's like when an indictment comes down.
It's tough.
It's presumption.
It's tough. It's tough to win, but I have a feeling he's going to win, Larry. The interesting thing is I've known Michael from many different standpoints, and Michael would spend a lot of time with my kids. I have beautiful kids, and at the time, like at Mar-a-Lago, and even in Trump Tower, the kids were very young. Michael would come, play with the kids. He just loved children. He was not a child molester, and I am certain of that. He loved children. He'd play with my son Eric and my son Donald, and he'd just play with them forever. He loved children, but he was not a child molester. And, you know, that whole final saga of Neverland and the police and what they did was, I think, a very, very bad part of Michael's life.
Just incredible. When you really look back on that, it just makes you love Trump even more because he was always standing up to the media complex. And that's really what it was that came down on Michael Jackson. Like I said, the record execs had power and he was fighting them and he was winning against them. He was going to eventually control the Beatles catalog. Next thing you know, he ends up dead. He first gets accused of being a pedophile and his entire legacy is destroyed with accusations that did not win in court. He, like I said, was acquitted. Go back, watch that episode that we did on him and inform yourself on that. But it's incredible to see that, and people are now replaying these clips and are feeling some type of way about Kamala Harris. And I think the majority of people just want to know, who is this woman and who does she work for?
So it should shock no one listening to this, but Donald Trump was full of shit when he was discussing June Chandler there. She was the mother of the first accusation against Michael Jackson, mother of the child. She did not have a history of suing people for money before this trial.
Yeah.
As for Michael Jackson playing with his young sons, that much is true from several sources. Jackson didn't make any moves on the Trump boys. That said, if the stories about Jackson had been true, messing with the kids of Donald Trump would have been pretty fucking dumb. I'm not saying that he was one, but abusers don't tend to go after the children of powerful people, as they prefer targets that are weak in every sense. There is a reason that we call such people predators. A predator animal doesn't go after something that can kill them. They go after the weak and the damaged. People predators are no different. But moving on from that, Candace gets back on her bullshit about Kamala Harris and her family. It takes almost 15 minutes. But then we get to something that I felt deserved discussion. One of Donald Harris, that's Kamala's father, one of his grandparents died, and he was a Freemason. Now, there is no actual proof to this. The man she cites in her show was known as Alvis Cambridge. Candace loosely links him to Kamala's father's line. Nothing in reality actually suggests this but her own beliefs. But that also isn't what we're discussing.
Now, this is a great time for us to pause and discuss Freemasonry because there are so many different elements, cultural elements of this, which I think a lot of Americans have the wrong idea. Either they don't think Freemasons Freemasonry is real, or they don't believe that Freemasonry is relevant, or they believe that Freemasonry is innocent. And I'm going to speak about all of those things. So first and foremost, what is Freemasonry? Full stop, okay? So during the late Middle Ages, the world was united under the Holy Roman Catholic Church, okay? So if you had any opposition to the church throughout Europe, you were forced to go underground, right? We were a Christian society. And among the only organized groups that were able to move freely throughout Europe were these guilds of stonemasons. And they would then be, therefore, because they could move freely, hence Freemasons, they were able to maintain meeting halls or lodges in virtually every major city. And the Masons were essentially very talented at architecture, and they had a bunch of secret knowledge, sometimes secret knowledge of architecture and of other topics. And that knowledge was dated back to the times of Egypt, right? And it was essential maintaining this knowledge in the construction of European churches and cathedrals. So one of the things that is well known is that Freemasons were in opposition to the church, right? They wanted to crush the church, which is why it is not ironic that the person who founded the Mormon church, as just one example, many of the churches, the very many Protestant faiths that we have, was Joseph Smith, and he was a Freemason. That's a fact, just as one example. Now, you may know some people that are Freemasons, and you're going, well, I know this person, and he goes to a lodge, and he's completely harmless. Yes, it is a known thing that 97% of Freemasons are not in the top tier degree of Freemasonry. And it is understood that at the top tier degree of Freemasonry, you essentially become one of the makers of the world.
Yeah, so this is a stew of lies and truth. Go ahead before I go on.
I'm wondering if she's going to link this back to Judaism somehow.
Don't you know it?
God fucking...
But first...
But they're not even Jewish.
But first, we'll get there.
But they're...
We'll get there. Oh, we're going to get there. And it's going to be for the dumbest fucking reason. Freemasonry was originally established as a guild of stonemasons or craftsmen. The first non-stonemason was admitted to a lodge in Scotland in 1599. From there, it slowly evolved into more of a set of concepts than a guild of craftsmen. Freemasonry never openly opposed the Catholic Church or any religion. The Catholic Church, however, has always opposed Freemasonry, with Pope Clement XII in 1738 declaring that joining Freemasonry would be a sin. The current church holds to this doctrine. Their issues are that Freemasons can follow any religion, and Freemasonry promotes democracy as opposed to the rule of men by way of divine right. Freemasonry welcomes Catholics and pretty much anyone that is willing to say that they believe in a divine being that created the universe. Buddhists, notably, would not be allowed.
Yeah.
No. Nor atheists. But the only thing they really oppose from their members is atheism. Joseph Smith, the recognized founder of Mormonism, became a Freemason several years after the founding of the Mormon Church. He was bumped up to Master Mason within a day of being accepted into the order, and from what I could find, there was no reason given for that except that he was a celebrity. I have known 2 people in the 33rd degree Mason slot. They were as harmless as the people in the lower levels. This is all nonsense, but it's pretty typical con artist drivel. Let's let her continue with this with a new addition to an old story from her.
Now, I remember, and I've spoken about this on this podcast, but one of the things that kind of ripped me into a new reality last year when I was studying with some priests was they sort of looked at me. I was in London at the time, and they just said to me in the kindest way possible, "You Americans don't know anything about real history. You know nothing about your own country. You don't even know that your country was established by Freemasons," right? And it's interesting, of course, that I'm referring to Catholic priests. I believe a lot of the reasons why people hate Catholicism or hate Catholics is because Catholics know history. They have been recording history for a long time. So if you're a Freemason and you're working to rewrite history, or you're telling people that America was established because of this or because of that, and you completely remove the aspects of Freemasonry from our textbooks as they have, then yeah, you are going to be at conflict with the Catholic Church, who remembers everything and keeps, very good records of history.
So now it's a group of dudes that she was studying with.
Instead of just one priest, and also the
you see where I'm
the
going
Catholic
here.
Church
You see where I'm going here.
has always worked to preserve history. The sacking of Constantinople begs to differ.
This entire time, every time she has told this story across dozens of episodes, it was her studying with a priest.
Yeah.
A singular guy. But her story has morphed into that from something else when she said previously that she met a priest who told her that Americans don't know anything about history and then supposedly pushed that documentary The Savage Peace on her. This is the mark of a liar. But I can agree that the Catholic clergy, it's weird to say them like that.
Yeah, clergy. Yeah.
Is great at record keeping, as it is known from their records what priests and nuns and others within the church that messed with parishioners of all ages, but mostly kids. It's known who those clergy were, when they did the things they were accused of, and the locations they were moved to, which the church did not give up willingly, but had to be sued into submission to give up those records. So yeah, they're great at knowing the truth and then subverting it in service to their overall structure.
Yeah.
But hey, here's a lot more bullshit.
So I'm just, for those of you guys who've never even heard of that, and like I said, I would have been among you. I'm very new to relearning American history through the lens of Freemasonry. Some known Freemasons: George Washington was a Freemason, Thomas Jefferson was a Freemason, Benjamin Franklin was a Freemason, Buzz Aldrin was a Freemason. Don't get me started. For those of you that have been listening to this podcast for a long time, you already know where I am at when it comes to NASA and the weird satanic chants that they were doing to establish the Apollo program and all of the weird stuff that happened leading up to the moon landing. So I freaked out when I learned Buzz Aldrin was a Freemason. It's not helping my case in believing those moon landings. I'll tell you that for free. Franklin Roosevelt was another Freemason. Sigmund Freud, that got me into a lot of trouble this year because I started speaking about Sigmund Freud. He's a member of B'nai B'rith, and I was telling you, like, this guy who keeps writing about child sex, there are some things you should know about him. He was a Freemason. Mozart was a Freemason. Okay, so at a point in our history, and likely even today, it was all about a battle for power, a battle for dominion over the earth, and they had all different sorts of aims. And it is true that different groups, high degree of Freemasons, practiced sexual rituals. And again, that gets back into the origins of NASA. For those of you that are new to this, you got to go back and watch the NASA episode. Watch the Michael Jackson episode. Watch the NASA origin story. It's shocking. It's all in your face. You can look this up literally on Wikipedia. It's so known. I'm not like on a weird Reddit feed learning this information. They believed that some of these people, and particularly speaking about NASA, that you could perform these sex rituals and have these like group sex settings, and you would be able to summon demons, and they believed that they would be able to conquer the earth this way. These people who established Apollo thought this. These people, I was sharing a story, Aleister Crowley was one of these individuals. He was quite literally kicked out of Italy, by Mussolini because he was hosting a sex ritual amongst the powerful elite. That's what I think is the biggest takeaway. The biggest takeaway is that the people that practiced these sexual rites and believed in sex magic and did these things in an effort to conquer the world were elites. This wasn't like a random group of people in the middle of nowhere living in the desert doing this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, this was the most powerful people in the world in an effort to believe that they would be able to conquer the nations. It's important to know that as we continue to discuss everything that's happening, because I even had to reset my mind as I was looking into Kamala's history and all this weird stuff, and I was going, okay, what was the world up to in the 1940s, as just an example? If Donald Harris was born in 1938, what was actually going on in our country? Well, we're talking about World War II period where this stuff was going on, where you had elites that were practicing thelema. We're talking about when Freemasonry was relevant, where these sorts of individuals who thought like this, leading up into the 60s, obviously, free love, sex, rock and roll. Many people don't know the basis of that was Aleister Crowley's religion, thelema. That was the precursor. It wasn't like a bunch of adults by themselves decided to have multiple partners. It was that a bunch of elites behind closed doors decided to introduce sexual liberation as a means to conquer nations. And it worked. It crushed the church in the process, right? Having multiple partners is explicitly anti-Christian, obviously. Making people not desire marriage. These are the sorts of things that actually took place in this country. And you can learn all of these things, by the way. I posted my book list on locals.com because people were like, where are you learning all this stuff? I'm like, I just read stuff that's outside of a textbook. And of course, start with that book, Chaos, because the 60s was a very, very wild time. People changing their names. Of course, prior to that, you had McCarthyism. In your textbook, you learned that he was just a paranoid guy, paranoid senator. It's not true. It was real. Communists were invading America. They were changing their names. They were selling our secrets. And he was brave to fight and stand up and to speak about it. Anyways, like I said, I want to just speak about that because when you see Alvis Cambridge openly put something like Freemasonry, I don't think that's a ha-ha joke after you die. He just was like, I'm not going to say this until I die, and then I want you guys to just publicize it. So we have someone who is likely Kamala Harris's great uncle or uncle, who is explicitly saying that he's a Freemason, and now we have a woman who is about to be president of the United States. How does that make you feel? Like I said, we don't want to overwhelm you guys. Another important part of this process is we don't want to make any mistakes by going through all of these documents too quickly because that's what they're waiting on, right? If everyone's watching these episodes, they're seeing the numbers, they understand people are processing this. They're waiting for me to make one slip up so they can like pound and be like, she's crazy. So I'm going through everything very slowly and very meticulously. We're investigating every claim that people are making, but until we feel certain that it's correct, we're not presenting it. Tomorrow, we are going to take a closer look, however, at Kamala's alleged mother, Shyamala Goplin. There are some interesting things in her filings, some interesting things about her pursuit of citizenship in America that have come up, and we feel well equipped to discuss those things. I also...
Okay. That was 5.5 minutes of pure noise.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to try and remember because about halfway through that I forgot what I initially was angry about.
Well, you might remember as I go through.
Okay.
So let's go through that list one at a time. I'm not replaying it. Just ride along with the truth. First, many of the founders of American politics were Freemasons. Big deal. Mason lodges were one of many safe places they could plot the American Revolution. So, for such an America First person, you would think Candace would know that. Several astronauts in the Gemini and Apollo programs were also Masons. NASA had a lot of social rules in the early days, and a lot of these guys belonged to a lot of the same clubs. Again, it's whatever. Freud was a member of B'nai B'rith, but that group and Freemasonry are not the same. It would be like equating the Black Panthers and the Klan, but less violent. Anyway, Freud was not a Freemason. The Masons claim their own, and they don't claim him, and he never said he was part of the group in his lifetime.
That's what it fucking was.
Yeah.
She's changed all the goddamn fucking Sigmund Freud.
Uh-huh.
She said he was a fucking Frankist.
Uh-huh.
And now he's a Freemason.
Yeah.
She said a few names in there that she claimed were Frankists, and of course, the only person to, be a good person that pushed out fucking a Freemason, supposedly Freemason, was a goddamn Nazi.
Yeah.
Fucking Mussolini.
Oh, we're getting there.
Okay.
Yeah. So, the Masons claim their own, they don't claim him. Mozart was a Mason, because a lot of powerful people in France were at the time. Candace mentions all of this, and her NASA stuff is on Wikipedia, which she has talked a lot about being full of shit. I realize hypocrisy is her brand, but come on. Moving on. Jack Parsons' work was a small but important component of NASA. As for Crowley being deported from Italy, his group was in an abbey that they purchased, and he intentionally drew and displayed porn on the walls. They had orgies there and so on. The abbey was near a town. I lost my place here. The abbey was near a town that didn't like the goings-on at the abbey, and they petitioned the government to intervene. Mussolini's people told him what was going on, and he signed off on the shutdown personally. The Crowley Abbey in Italy lasted about 3 years. Anyway, powerful elite people were not among the congregants, as none were named in the reports of the time. Occasionally, celebrities did check in with what Crowley was up to in America and England and elsewhere, but government officials and people with actual power generally knew better than to fuck with this noise for very long. This is why Candace and her ilk will often say things like powerful elite people are involved with these things, but they never name names. Candace, of course, went on to insinuate that Donald Harris, born in Jamaica in 1938, had something to do with or was the result of things happening with Dub Dub Dose, which, it should be noted, Freemasonry was open to any man in Jamaica, regardless of race, which was not the case everywhere. For black men, for example, a separate type of Mason Hall had been established and named after its founder, Prince Hall Masonry in Boston, post-Revolutionary War. Anyway, yeah, Candace's book list is a garbage bag full of insanity, half-truths, and lies. The book list, uploaded by a nice soul on Locals, is going to be included in the episode description. Candace Owens' Amazon page. Finally, she talked about McCarthyism. Joseph McCarthy was a crackpot, and the vast majority of the cases he brought against people were overturned. Of course, Candace defends him. Anyway, she jumps back into begging her audience to do basic detective work, and it's frankly pretty fucking sad. She wants so much to throw Kamala Harris under the bus that this, by the way, is the start of the second week of this song and dance. Skipping it and her continued song and dance ditty stuff shaves over 10 minutes off the show. In her comments section, Candace claims that Obama was part of the Pizzagate conspiracy. He was not mentioned once in the whole thing, which is ridiculous for even her low standards. She does this on Rumble, of course.
Go to sleep. It's like the last thing I think about is I'm like, what am I missing? What am I missing? There are so many twists and turns, and they have so many names, and it's just so clear to me that this is some sort of a communist ring that was somehow running people through Jamaica. And so I just need to prod this narrative further, looking into the Cambridge family. I am so organized, but again, I don't want to misstep. I just feel like they're waiting for that to happen. It's very similar to like Pizzagate. Like, people had valid questions about these really weird emails that Barack Obama was sending about pizza and like hot dogs and pizza parties all the time, and then somebody made a mistake and took it too far, and next thing you know they were like, anybody who believed in Pizzagate. So you just have to be careful and make sure that anything that you're presenting is an actual fact. And then they never had to answer the questions about why he was sending so many weird emails about pizza, and like it was just totally bizarre. And I want to make sure that Kamala still has to answer all of these questions, and the best way to do that is just to make sure that we are operating slowly and fact-checking everything and not saying anything with certainty unless we are 1,000% certain of what it is that we are saying. And like I said, we do have the time to still do this. Jennifer?
Yeah, Candace is not going carefully on this bullshit. Obama was never mentioned in Pizzagate, and Candace has spent much of the time I have saved you all from hearing, guessing at and trying to explain her various loose threads that in no way represent reality. She wouldn't get in trouble for any of this, and she knows it because pretty much everyone mentioned is either in Jamaica, deceased, or both. On to episode 76.
All right, buckle up, boys, because we are headed to World War III, just as I predicted. How did I do that? Either I have a crystal ball and my name is Miss Cleo, call me now, or this has been the most obviously planned war in the history of obviously planned wars. It's actually insulting to me how obvious this is. We're going to get to the Middle East, but first we have to take a closer look, at Donald J. Harris. after many of you were sending me clips of Judge Joe Brown, this is so random, speaking about how he knew Donald, and yeah, he claims that Donald was not black. All that coming up on Candace.
You mean the guy that hates black people claimed that the guy that he knew wasn't black?
Oh, it's so much worse. Candace talks for about 9 minutes on a 40-something minute show about more unprovable assertions on Donald Harris, and then she plays the Judge Joe Brown material. I'm not going to play the Judge Joe Brown clips. Joe Brown has been a professional asshole for a long time, and he's been proven a liar on other programs such as Knowledge Fight. I see no reason to play his bullshit, but he says that he knew Donald Harris at one point. The clip doesn't indicate when. It's also very recent, which tells me he decided to say all this shit within the last week or so. I looked to see if Joe Brown and Donald Harris would have had any association ever, and I couldn't find anything. He's just full of it. Moving on, we get into Candace's unproven assertion that Donald Harris was in a play once, possibly, perhaps, in high school. Because everyone in drama classes is evil? Next clip includes a new Candace Red ad on purpose.
I mean, as we've proven before, it's healthy for people to go through drama and art classes. Otherwise, they end up, having tiny mustaches and, commanding a Wehrmacht, as it be.
Just wait for it.
Of death, it says that they are performing the last rites, and that the play was written by a 20-year-old named Dennis Scott. So what are we to conclude from all of this? The reason why I'm bringing up the fact that he may be in the arts is because this was a focus for a lot of communists, like being able to sell yourself. It is something that I have brought up on this show many times. If you begin to look into the history of a lot of these world leaders who look to me like D-list actors, who behave like D-list actors. Don't even get me started on Zelensky, constantly wearing military fatigues because he's trying to sell to us that he just needs more and more money and he's really down in the trenches, while we hear rumors that his wife is on shopping sprees in Paris. Don't get me started on the fact that it is true that Zelensky was an actor, a well-known actor. He played the role, okay? President Zelensky played the role of a president on a TV show before he actually became the president of Ukraine. Are we joking? Are we joking? I have to ask that question. Yes, he was in the arts. There's photos of him dressed up in latex and dancing, and it's all very a lot. It's all very a lot, my friends. That's all I'll say about that. You have Justin Trudeau. You have Emmanuel Macron, how he met his husband. He was in drama. He was in the drama class of Brigitte Macron. And so I just don't like when I start to see people who I believe are dedicated communists, who I can trace back to a history of theater. Again, we don't have a confirmation that that's definitively him, but I would say all the signs point to yes, and we are continuing to investigate him and his relationship with Shyamala Goblin, because I believe that a lot of these marriages at this time, and again, this is a theory not yet proven, were just arranged marriages to get papers. That they had a goal of getting papers, they had a way of getting papers. Sometimes it was simply to have a child get papers, to have anchor babies that could get papers. Whatever the system was, it appears to me that we should be taking a close look at what was motivating all of these marriages and these marriage announcements. I can't find these marriage certificates, but I can always find a marriage announcement. Even that, to me, feels somewhat suspicious. So we are definitely going to continue to investigate that. Those are just the updates that I have for you today. I'm going to take a pause there. Thank one of our sponsors at the Wellness Company, because the world is getting more unpredictable each day. Political insanity, rumors of a civil war, an unstable stock market, and now the looming threat of a new global health emergency. Yup. Did you know that there's a bird flu summit coming up this week in Washington? Yeah, it's eerily reminiscent of Event 201, which foreshadowed the COVID pandemic. And get this, the first topic on the agenda is mass fatality management planning. If that doesn't send chills down your spine, I really don't know what will. But here's the good news. You don't have to be scared if you're prepared. The wellness company created the medical emergency kit, and every home in America should definitively have at least one of these in their homes. They are packed with life-saving meds like ivermectin, amoxicillin, and even a Z-Pack. Imagine this. No more frantic searches for a doctor, no more emergency waiting rooms, just a few clicks, and this kit is delivered to your front door. In times like these, have your medical emergency kit. It's not just a luxury, it is a necessity. Protect your family by preparing right now. Head over to twc.health/Candace and use code Candace to save $30. Don't wait until it's too late. Act now, take control, and ensure that you're protected against whatever comes next. Again, that's twc.health/Candace and use code Candace to save $30 plus free shipping right now.
Okay, that was a lot of nothing, but let's go through it. First, if Donald Harris was in a play in school, big fucking deal. He didn't study drama as an academic, so it's pretty clear that the acting bug didn't bite him. Candace, I'll point out, has an IMDb page.
Seriously?
Oh yeah. Moving forward, yes, Zelensky was an actor on a comedy drama series about a regular dude that gets elected president. But I'd also like to point out that Trump played a competent business owner on several seasons of The Apprentice. People can play roles. You know, whatever. Zelensky's wife is not going on shopping sprees in Paris, and Zelensky himself is a target taking fire among his men in Ukraine. It's ridiculous to assert otherwise, and Candace knows it, which is why she moves on. Kamala's parents got together during student protests as activists in the 60s. Their marriage wasn't arranged in any sense. Again, hot garbage with zero proof from Candace. We discussed already why she can't get marriage certificates, so I'm moving past that to her ad read. The bird flu transmission to people is unfortunately a very real threat right now, and I hope there is a vaccine available soon. It's interesting that the medicine kit Candace is pushing includes antibiotics. Antibiotics, when taken for whatever, are a real problem, not just for individuals, but for communities as a whole. I have taken them whenever they've been prescribed to me, and I take the whole run, and I usually feel better as planned. That said, I haven't had to take any in several years. But people that just get them whenever they have a cold, over the counter, like what is in this pack, those are the scary ones. Because they are the ones driving the evolution of the very diseases the antibiotics fight. The reason these antibiotics are only supposed to be prescribed and not gotten over the counter are for that reason, among others. It's fucking ridiculous that Mrs. Anti-Vax would want to enable a world that would be even more dangerous for her children. After rambling for a couple of minutes about how she thinks wars are planned in boardrooms, Candace gets into some new shit.
Truly, the best way to guard yourself is just by tethering yourself to reality. You and your family must be tethered to reality, okay? Our government and our media does not tell us the truth. Our media is not the fourth estate. They are the estate. They work with the government. They have been since Operation Mockingbird, since CIA put them on the payroll. These are the facts. You can look it up. Operation Mockingbird has never been discontinued, okay? Their job is to echo whatever it is that the Pentagon's aims are. And they even use Hollywood. Pentagon has a Hollywood budget. In the Pentagon, there is a Hollywood office. Come on. Like that, we have to wake up to this. The signs were so everywhere that they even updated the draft this year. So I want to take you guys through the history of the draft in this country, because whenever you hear them start talking about the draft, it means they've already decided that we're going to war. So it's officially called the Selective Service System, and it was first founded to accommodate World War I in 1917, okay? It was then disbanded in 1920, and then they brought it back in 1940, just before Pearl Harbor, okay? Well, we didn't know we were going to go to war, but it's just convenient that we just brought it back, and Pearl Harbor's happened, and look it, boys, we're going to war. And then they terminated it in 1975 in a decision that it was actually immoral to force people to go into war and to draft them into military service, and they opted instead for a more moral, all-volunteer military. So you can choose to serve your country. But then when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, President Carter reinstituted the draft registration for boys to complete within 30 days of their 18th birthday, under penalty of 5 years imprisonment and up to $250,000 in fines. Now,
yeah, but also a lot of no. So she is right about the draft being used for conscription in Dub Dub Uno and Dub Dub Dos. She skipped over the Korean War because everyone does,
Yeah.
for no good reason. And, of course, Vietnam.
Which, honestly, Vietnam is probably its most
Heinous.
relevant and heinous one that is always used when referencing the draft. Is
It's also the
Vietnam.
most recent reason why it was, kicked off.
Yeah.
The draft was ended during the Nixon years. In 1973, which is not what she said. She said it was 1975, and this included the Selective Service. Jimmy Carter did get Selective Service reinstated in response to Afghanistan conflicts in 1980. He did this in July and initially proposed that it should apply to women as well. The military didn't go for that, but it may have been one of many reasons Carter was voted out of office later in November of 1980. Anyway, as for the charges, Candace mentions at the end there, almost no one has ever been charged for not doing the Selective Service, but I'll let her continue.
To be clear, historically speaking, there has only ever been 14 convictions for the draft, for refusing the draft, and there haven't been any since 1986. But if you skip it, if you don't register for the draft when you turn 18 and you are a male, you will be barred from working government jobs, you'll be barred from receiving student loans, and in around 40 states, you'll be barred from obtaining a driver's license. By the way, first two sound great. I want to work government job, and I don't even think kids should be going to university, given how dumb they're making everybody and how Marxist they're making all the students. But not being able to obtain a driver's license is a way to punish you for not signing up for the draft. So the case in point that I'm making, obviously, is that when Washington begins tinkering with draft laws, it means the boardroom has planned our war, and that's exactly what happened back in June of 2024. You might have missed it. You might have missed this in the news. But the House suddenly decided to pass a large defense budget that included a provision that would automatically enroll young men between the ages of 18 and 26 for the draft. Okay, this was the House's version of the National Defense Authorization Act, which authorized, of course, $895 billion in more military spending, because who's counting, and it's okay if they can't count at all or audit themselves. That's just, we're supposed to expect that now. And they were able to pass that in the House by a vote of 217 to 199, okay?
Okay, so okay for sure. From the top, no one registers for the draft. For Congress to pull the draft again would require separate legislation. Even military recruiters will tell you this. Second, no state, period, bars anyone from getting a driver's license for failing to register.
Yeah.
In fact, it actually comes up as either an opt-in or an automatic registration or an opt-out choice, depending on where a person resides. As for student loans from the government, this is no longer true as of 2021, during a bill passed during the Biden administration. But Candace can't say that or be bothered to know it. But the thing about government employment is true. You got to be registered. As for the thing that passed the House in 2024, the National Defense Authorization Act, she is almost correct. And also by her own standard, kind of lying. The House did pass it with a 217 to 199 vote, with 15 people abstaining from voting. But before we get into how the vote split, I want to mention that this does automate the process, which is projected to save the government time and money. It would simply auto-enroll young men only into the Selective Service, which avoids the mess of having to register in the first place. But where Candace is lying by omission here is that she isn't saying that the Republican majority voted for the bill, while the Democrats overwhelmingly voted against it. However, a few from each side did cross the aisle to vote for and against it, surprisingly. Among the Republicans that voted against it were two I wouldn't have guessed.
Yeah.
Namely, Candace's favorite dude, Thomas Massie, and Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia.
Huh.
I doubt it was for this particular reason, but I also didn't look up why because I don't care. But no one is trying to get Americans to go to war, and I'll say it again, the only people talking about war with Iran or Russia are Trump toadies. She goes on to talk more about the Israel situation, and we can all agree it's bad and we shouldn't be involved beyond demanding for peace and an end to hostility. Candace does make an impassioned plea against following Israel into another world war, but it runs for about 7 minutes before she gets into her America First rhetoric. Time for comments, but nothing new is there, so we're skipping it and going to episode 77.
All right, everybody, stop the presses, because somebody from the Harris family Circle has contacted me. Apparently the family is being inundated with calls from the press, particularly the Washington Post. And so I know that the VP debates happened last night, but scrap that because this is all I can talk about. I'm very sorry. Plus, I got an email from a man named Moses, and he is swearing that Kamala's paternal line is Jewish. And he's not just speculating, he actually put together an entire compelling document that I'm going to show you. This is all getting extremely crazy, but we are getting very close to the truth. So let's get started. Welcome back to Candace.
So let me just hammer this out straight, right?
Okay.
They're saying she's not. They're saying she's at this point. Saying she's not Indian. She's barely black. She's mostly white Jewish Irish now.
Yeah.
Is that what they're saying?
Yeah. Like I said, it goes all kinds of dumb.
Her complexion and her facial features don't even match the white Jewish Irish.
No, not at all. Yeah, so that's interesting. This was the day after the VP debates, when the internet was abuzz about how our governor, Tim Walz, looked like a deer in the headlights at one point, and J.D. Vance was dodging questions and sounding like a child when he called the moderators that dared perform a fact check on him. Anyway, Candace jumps into the Kamala heritage stuff, and per the usual, we're not fucking with it, as almost none of it is actually based in fact because she doesn't have actual documents. Unfortunately, about 24 minutes into this episode, she says some bullshit worthy of pushing back on, involving Kamala's mother, Shaimala Gopalan. Hope I said that correctly. Anyway, here's what it is.
Okay. Now, I know I've been promising you all week that we were going to cut to Kamala's family, but the Donald Harris thing just keeps becoming so interesting, and every time I get one of these emails and just trying to now establish a contact, I keep prioritizing that, but I obviously am seeing all of your emails regarding her mother, and I did want to just show you this one comment because I think it's really interesting. We actually have received so many comments that are developing the same theme, that the marriage between Kamala's parents is just strange, and this is one comment that came in yesterday on YouTube that pretty much sums up all of the comments and emails that we have been getting pertaining to this. This woman writes, Indian here from India with some Indian context. BTW, love your work, Candace. Kamala's mother belonged to a very high-class bureaucratic family. So marrying someone outside your religion, caste, race in that era was extremely unlikely, especially for someone like Kamala's mother. Not to mention marrying a black person would be absolutely impossible because racism has been prevalent in India as well. So I completely believe Kamala's dad not being black, rather being Irish, Indian, Hindu, since he looks like a lot of old Indian men that I see in real life here, especially the South Indians. The Communist Party also seems so interesting because in the 20th century, especially post-independence, communism was extremely popular in India, owing to the closeness to Soviet Union. And even today, some of the most influential and powerful political parties in India, especially South India, the region that Kamala's mom belongs to, are hardcore communist parties with hardcore communist ideologies even today. The head of the state of Kamala's mom is from has literally changed his family name to Stalin. LOL. Total personal opinion, but I absolutely believe Kamala's dad not being black at all, but Irish Hindu with maybe some Indian ancestry, because that's way more believable, especially when you know the family background and social class and status of Kamala's mom and the Indian society and mentality during the 20th century. P.S. As a non-American, I find it insane that this isn't mainstream news in your country. I follow global news, especially American news, very closely, and to find no one talking about this is almost a culture shock. Because had it been any other country, this would have been a huge media piece running across all news channels 24/7. Well, I'll tell you one thing, it would have been everywhere in America had it been Donald Trump.
Yeah, that's probably not an Indian person. Mm-hmm. Because first, the politician she mentioned that supposedly changed his name to Stalin did not change his name. He was born with the name M.K. Stalin, given to him by his father, because he was born the day that Joseph Stalin died and his father was a fan. However, MK Stalin, as he is known, is not a communist. Moving on to Kamala's grandparents. What I was able to find is that Kamala Harris's maternal grandparents had mixed reactions to her mother Shyamala Gopalan's marriage to Donald Harris. Initially, there was some disappointment and hurt, primarily because they had not met the husband before the wedding. Shyamala's brother, Balachandran, stated that their parents were hurt and disappointed about the marriage, but insisted that their reaction wasn't about race. The marriage to a foreigner was seen as breaking tradition. Shyamala herself acknowledged in a 2003 interview that by marrying an American, she had broken the Gopalan bloodline that goes back more than 1,000 years. There were concerns within the family about how the marriage would be perceived in India. Shyamala believed that not all Indians would be accepting of her marriage to a black man. However, Shyamala's father seemed to have eventually accepted the marriage. When Kamala and Maya asked their grandfather if he didn't like their father, he reportedly told them, "Well, your mother liked him and he had no bad habits, so what's there not to like?" The first time Shyamala's parents met their son-in-law was in 1966, 3 years after the marriage, on neutral ground in Zambia, where Shyamala's father was posted at the time. Overall, while there was initial shock and concern, it appears that Shyamala's parents eventually came to terms with the marriage, though it remained a sensitive topic within the family and the broader Indian community at the time. Given that all of this is public knowledge in the community there, either this particular Indian fan is a fascist, which is sadly common there, or they're full of shit some other way. Either way, it's a trash take. I'm not spending any more time on it. I was going to close out 77 and move on to 78, but then there was this blatant and outrageous lie right at the end that deserves to be heard. It's actually 2 lies, so normal for this show anyway.
Tora writes, curious, have you heard anything about the people committing suicide in the hurricane-struck areas that Kamala and Biden have completely neglected? She is evil and it starts from her hidden roots. No, but I did receive a few emails from people that are in the military saying that they were supposed to go down and help in the hurricane, and now they're being sent overseas to the Middle East. That's your tax dollars at work. Americans that are suffering, nothing. Sorry. Deal with the hurricane, the flood. We got to go defend the borders and the people of foreign nations because Lebanon and Israel have some drama going on. I was really sickened to read those emails, but no surprise. Our politicians have completely sold us out. They lied to us about everything.
My God, stop it. The Biden administration did not neglect the Hurricane Helena areas. Helena? I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Anyway, neither did FEMA. And are U.S. troops being sent to Lebanon or Israel right now? Directly, no. The USA maintains about 40,000 troops in the Middle East. But the ones going are mostly rotating out some that are there as a matter of normal work. Some have been sent to bolster the numbers because of the conflict shit Israel is pulling. But it isn't a surge of troops. This is fucking ridiculous. That ends episode 77, on to 78.
I am absolutely giddy today, you guys. I did it. I spoke to Kamala's uncle officially. And by the way, he's a gem. 10 out of 10. I really wish that he was running for president instead of her because he comes across as a very honest man. I'm going to tell you all about that conversation and how it's now led me to many more questions. So many more questions that I have about Kamala and her true heritage. Also, she's once again been asked about her racial identity. This happened just 3 days ago. And suddenly, she's a little iffy on the answer. Kamala and me are now in a very particular kind of relationship. I'm like Maury, and she's essentially my guest. I'm asking her a question. Kamala, during your run as president, we asked you if your genealogy was actually Irish Indian.
You said no. The lie detector determined that was a lie.
Oh! Welcome back to Candace.
Comedy.
Woo.
Satire. Something else. Unfunny. Candace says she speaks with Kamala's uncle, with zero proof given. She doesn't play the phone call or the conversation on air. It's not available as a download. It's all based on her notes and recollection. She gets into a conversation Kamala Harris had with some black podcasters on a show called All the Smoke. I'm not familiar with it. It's supposed to be popular. The audio is intentionally bad when Candace plays it, so I'm not replaying it here. Anyway, Candace has trouble understanding why Harris thinks having to answer the question about whether or not she is black is stupid. I agree with Harris, but Candace has thoughts on the matter.
Wow. So she just doesn't answer the question at all, right? So before we had her really leaning into being black, now all of a sudden she doesn't even mess with that. I don't mess with that. I don't even mess with that. They need to go to therapy. She's pulling this Freudian technique. Obviously, I've spoken to you about Freud, who was a disgusting human being who essentially gaslit women who were actually being abused by their fathers. So what she's doing is this exact same Freudian technique of gaslighting people by being like, actually, you need therapy. The problem is you. The problem is actually you for asking the question. No, Kamala, we're asking the question because you made this a theme in your bookie book, which we're going to get to in a little bit, okay? So you don't get to now just not address the question whatsoever. Put yourself in her shoes, okay? I'm going to put myself in her shoes. I'm running for president of the United States, okay? And these questions keep popping up about whether or not I am black. Do you know how simple it would be to simply answer the question? List your black relatives in 4 seconds. I would be like, this is my grandma, this is my grandpa. Suddenly she's a little iffy on the details here. Why didn't she just say, yes, obviously my grandmother is Beryl. Here's a picture of her. She's black. I'm disgusted with the people that are even calling this into question. Here's my great grandmother, Iris Finnegan. I am obviously black. Instead, she goes, oh, do you really want to talk about it? That's what I say to these shows. Do you really want to talk about race? Do you really want to talk about the 1/8 rule? I mean, how dare she? And the answer is yes, Kamala. Actually, I would like to talk about it. Yeah, I'm actually totally up for talking about the 1-drop rule, the 1/8 rule. Let's discuss history. That's what those journalists should have done. That's what those former NBA players should have done, not giving her a free pass. I would have been like, no, ma'am, name your ancestors. And why are you bringing up the 1/8 rule at all? Let's talk about the history here, okay? The 1-drop rule was actually a legal doctrine in the United States that was used as a means of racial classification, okay? It really dates back to the antebellum period in Virginia, where people of color were considered legally white if they had less than 25% African ancestry. So we're talking about something that was pre-Civil War, but then the classifications became especially relevant throughout Jim Crow in the South, obviously, because of segregation. So they're like, are you white or are you black? So they needed to know how to quantify whiteness and blackness. The laws were first officially codified in Tennessee as one of Virginia's racial integrity laws. They wanted birth certificates to just be very clear whether a parent was legally white or legally a Negro, so that it was known which laws in society you had to abide by.
About that, the 1/8 rule was actually different across several states, but the idea was always the same, which was to deny people all sorts of social norms if they had any noticeable traces of blackness in their family line or physical appearance. This went from the Civil War into the American South post-Reconstruction period and had echoes in the post-Civil War United States in areas as far west as California and Oregon, as far north as Rhode Island, and as far south as the borders. Things like redlining and overall segregation happened all over wherever assholes could get away with it. Anyway, let's let her continue.
What about Indian Americans? Because strangely, she brings up her mom. You would think the first thing she would do would be to bring up her dad. Instead, she brings up her mom. She's like, my mom was very clear that she was raising 2 black women. Your mother is Indian. Like fully 100% Indian. So the fact that the first person that you recall is a non-black person is suspicious. And regarding Indian Americans, just to be clear, in 1923, the Supreme Court decided in the United States versus Bhagat Singh Thind that Indians were classified as Caucasians, as they had been by anthropologists. They upheld that, but they also made it clear that they were not considered white. So that is probably the answer as to why her mother put Caucasian on her birth certificate. That was actually the legal classification for Indian women. Now, also regarding this 1-drop rule, Kamala Harris was never subject to it ever in her entire lifetime. She was born in California. Just to be clear, that was the very first state to end segregation, and they did that back in 1947.
Actually, no. Just schools. The law in 1947 only applied to schools. Businesses and public and private facilities in California would still be able to segregate for another 12 years, which led to the passing of the Unruh Civil Rights Act of 1959, because it turns out we have to pass laws to keep people from being shitty to other people. Kamala was born in 1964. Anyway, let's continue.
Yeah.
Yep.
That statement of segregation, at least for California, was ended in 19 what?
Okay, school segregation was ended in 1947.
Yeah, okay. That part.
Uh-huh.
I talked to a guy that was sitting there. Fuck. I don't remember how old he was.
Doesn't matter.
But he was talking about how they had ended segregation back when he was in school, and that, you know, they never really had any harshness or any problems to deal with since the end of segregation.
Yeah. Well, it was ended nationally late into the 60s, but yeah.
Yeah, still
Later in the 60s, yeah.
the whole thing of like, every time I hear that comment out of somebody of like, segregation was ended at yada yada time, there's no way it was still difficult after segregation.
Yeah, I guarantee everybody that says that, white.
Mm-hmm.
White, yeah. Yeah.
Yep. If they're not white, they were raised in a very, very nice mansion.
Oh, well, let's continue with this. We got 2 clips to go.
All right.
So they did it 7 years before the Supreme Court decision of Brown versus Education, which federalized desegregating all of the schools. So it actually infuriates me that she does this, that she essentially goes back and pretends that she's lived through something. Like, well, let's talk about the 1-drop rule. Why are we discussing the 1-drop rule? By the way, even if you were subjected to it, you probably would have passed, since none of your parents are listed as Negroes on your birth certificate. Like, what are you doing mining the history of black people that came before you and who you are still refusing to name? You put them in a book once, but that was it. Now you don't want to talk about Grandma Beryl. What's up with that? Now you don't want to talk about great-grandma Iris Finnegan. What is up with that? And by the way, as I was considering that, her upbringing and how strange it is that she keeps leaning into this idea, like she was born 2 years before my mother was born, and my mother didn't live through segregation, my mother didn't live through any of this stuff. These are not her memories. These are the memories of my grandparents. My grandfather lived through segregation. I'm going, why does Kamala keep doing this? Like acting like she grew up in the 40s and in the 50s with these sorts of memories. And then I remembered suddenly that she did this on stage a while ago, where she got almost teary-eyed and emotional talking about busing and desegregation. I'm going to roll that back for you just to jog your memory. Take a listen.
You also worked with them to oppose busing. And, you know, there was a little girl in California who was part of the 2nd class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
Okay. Oh my God. Guys, so you watch that clip, okay? You're an American. You see she's getting a little choked up, and you can instantly assume that what she means is that she was like a Ruby Bridges. Yeah, like that little girl was me in 2nd grade. I was a part of the 2nd class to be desegregated. Like that instantly signals, given the emotionality of it, that she was a Ruby Bridges. Talk about mining black history. Well, let me be clear. She intentionally misled people here to make them believe that she was a young Ruby Bridges. This is how disgusting and despicable this woman is. She wanted people to go back in their minds to all they learned about Ruby Bridges, the images of Ruby Bridges having to be protected by police as she entered into that school in Louisiana. She wanted people to go back in their minds to that. That's why she's getting all choky. She's like on the brink of tears. That little girl. So to be perfectly clear here, that little girl went to Thousand Oaks Elementary School in Berkeley, and far from that impression she's giving, she did not live through any desegregation or any real desegregation at all, because as I mentioned, the schools had already gone through that before she was born. Literally before she was born in 1947. In fact, the school district had to issue a statement after that performance on stage. And this is what they had to put up on their website for clarification. They wrote, "There has been some confusion in the media and social media around the Berkeley schools and integration due to the fact that our high school was already integrated, as evidenced, for example, by high school yearbooks which show children of many race and ethnicities at school together prior to 1968. In Berkeley, we only have one comprehensive high school, so it was integrated by default. Our elementary schools, however, reflected the racial composition of our neighborhoods, which, like many neighborhoods across America, reflected the history of segregation stemming from policies which restricted the opportunities of non-white residents. So then they go on, we recently celebrated the 50-year anniversary of our voluntary busing plan, and you can find additional details here. So let me clarify to you what actually happened in her childhood. There was no desegregation effort that she had to live through. She was not Ruby Bridges. Rather, what they realized was because of the past in which you had black people all living in one neighborhood, and this was contributed sometimes because of like red line districting. You had black people living in one neighborhood, you had white people living in one neighborhood. What ended up happening was that you had schools which were like majority black and which were majority white. And so what they wanted to do in Berkeley was to be the first to offer a busing plan to turn that around so that the buses would pick up students that lived far from the white school and bring them over there so that the schools would be more evenly mixed. That's what she's describing. So after they put and implemented this busing plan, Kamala was the second or third class since they had implemented this busing plan. Nothing to do with desegregation, just an effort to say, okay, we're realizing now if people are just districted according to where they live, you're going to have these schools that are like 85% black and some schools that are 85% white. That's what it is. So just thinking about the emotionality and how tricky she's being here, again, trying to allude to like some Ruby Bridges scenario, really makes me angry. It is just so unacceptable. I just can't stand this fraud. And it's so important to state also that the one-drop rule was declared officially unconstitutional in 1967. That was just 3 years after Kamala was born. This is just not her childhood at all. Not her childhood at all. This is just what she does. She lies and she lies and she lies. But it gets better. It gets better. But first I'm going to remind you guys about preborn.
So yes, Harris was part of the second class at Berkeley schools to segregate via busing. Black kids from outlying districts were bused to predominantly white schools and vice versa. It was the only program in the country to do that at the time, and it happened even with members of the general public calling for the ouster of the board members that passed it through. Harris was not at the time, nor since, comparing herself to Ruby Bridges. That wasn't the point of that speech. At the time she said those words, it was back during the Democrat debates when she was accosting Biden at the time for having been historically opposed to busing plans like that one. Harris has never compared herself to Ruby Bridges because that would be silly and unnecessary. This is an example of Candace inserting entire versions of things that don't exist in some attempt to rile up her audience and possibly get clicks. It's pretty disgusting. Candace now proves that she can't read basic differences in online ad listings.
So like I said, it gets better because yesterday I was going through her book that I downloaded. I downloaded that so that you didn't have to, because I wanted to send a picture of her grandma Beryl to someone. So initially when we started looking into the story, my producer had downloaded the book, I had downloaded the book, but he had stumbled upon the picture of Beryl. So I hadn't actually flipped through the ebook that I had downloaded. And so remarkably, it was kind of the first time I was going to the picture segment looking for Beryl, and I realized Beryl's not in this book. I was going, wait, what's going on? This is her book. Where is the Beryl picture? And I said to my producer, like, did we make a mistake? Like, this is definitely in the book. He pulls his up. He has a picture of Beryl. Mine doesn't. I'm going, is this a different edition of the book? And yes, it was. There were actually 2 publications of the book. One in January of 2019. And then 5 months later, in May of 2019, they published what is known as a Young Readers Edition. Basically, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's meant to be for younger readers, and it's typically more pictorial, right? So they want to change a couple of words, essentially kind of dumb it down to make it easier to read and include more pictures. Yet in this edition, they decided to remove pictures. And it's just, I guess, ironic that the pictures that they removed for the Young Readers Later edition were pictures of Black Iris and Grandma Beryl. There were more pictures that were removed, but the family members were all still there, except for Black Iris and Grandma Beryl. I found that to be extremely interesting. But suddenly
Okay, I noticed that too. When I went to go buy the book myself, I couldn't help but laugh because in the listings on any ebook or print site, the wording for younger readers is right there. They aren't trying to hide it.
Yeah.
I know at this point that I shouldn't expect much of Candace, but the first time I heard this, I choked on my coffee. Anyway, I'm not going to engage any more with her bullshit on this. I hit my limit on that last one. I think we've covered all the bases that Candace has here, and it isn't worth going through further. She can't prove any of her assertions, as usual. She has no real proof of anything that wasn't already well known and documented, because the various paperwork she is demanding her audience obtain for her can't legally be obtained by just anyone. So it follows that her many likely incorrect assertions are bunk, and she can't be bothered to fact-check basic history, which isn't new to anyone, but I really didn't expect that she would play the card of not only saying that Kamala Harris isn't black at all, but also that her family on her father's side is misrepped all over the place. So, enough of this for this episode. Let's drink something dumb. And tonight, we have our second Warheads, Sour Peach Soda.
Yep.
Yep.
You can't forget the exclamation. Has Deadpool taught you nothing?
Sour
Yeah, there you
Peach
go.
Soda. There we go.
Yeah.
Never let it be said I didn't learn anything from Ryan Reynolds. And it was in a can, and now it is going into a glass. Oh, it sounds like pee, and it looks pissish. Very yellow. Foamy.
Also, I know that we aren't touching too much base on the P. Diddy stuff. I haven't even looked into it personally.
Yeah.
But I keep getting told shit or overhearing shit from friends and coworkers that are actually keeping up with it. And I just gotta say, it's becoming less and less of a wonder as to what Keisha meant by the line "waking up in the morning like P. Diddy."
Yeah. Oh, we'll all find out in due time.
Yep.
He wants that trial to get underway,
This,
which is his American right.
Yep. Well,
I mean, this does smell peachy.
yeah, it smells vaguely peachy.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's sour. I give him that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gonna do the whiskey treatment now.
Oh god, yeah.
It's really sour, but I'm not getting a whole lot of peach out of it. It tastes fine. I mean,
It Oh.
now I'm gonna go ahead and say this. I am the kind of crazy asshole that can peel a lemon perfectly
Yeah.
and eat it as if it were an orange. So, I might not be the best judge of how sour this is, but I do like it. It's quite good.
It's pretty jaw-clenchingly sour.
Yeah, it is.
And
It is the opposite of cloyingly sweet.
and there is a peach like note in the back.
Yeah,
But my mouth is too busy reeling from the sour to
I'm getting more of the peach out of the smell.
Yeah.
I'm not really getting it out of the flavor. Still, though, it's quite good. I'm really fond of this.
It's pretty good, and no,
Wow. Oh, I just did the last of it.
one
That
fell
kind of
swoop.
hit. Yeah, that finally hit. Wow. Oh. It's still good. I don't know that I'll be buying another one anytime soon, but
Oh,
it really, it took it a second to really punch me in the face. I think I needed more exposure. Mm-hmm. But, yeah.
and there's a soda you should save yourself from drinking.
Yeah.
I got it at work. Well, got it at old job.
Right, the old place, yeah.
Yeah. God, I hate it when my brain goes, oh yeah, I did this thing at work, and it's like, no, you haven't worked for Wendy's in like 3 years.
Yeah, right.
But, no. Got it there at the novelty soda shelf,
Yeah.
the one.
Yeah.
Well, I've been buying like 6 packs of sarsaparilla from there,
Right.
And for some reason, they're not carrying sarsaparilla right now, which is a little disappointing.
Yeah.
But I saw Cure-All Cola, and I was like, I'll give that a shot.
Yeah.
What the fuck? That is the worst fucking cola I have ever drank. Like, I want to get you a bottle just so you can taste it and do the exact same thing I did, which is spit it out and dump it out. I paid fucking
let me go ahead and say
$3
something
for
too.
that thing.
The root beer that we got that we really liked.
Oh, the ginger beer,
not the root beer. Yeah, ginger beer that we got. There it is. There's the confusion. Anyway, you know, I had got that the one night. We had hit your old place, and we were walking back over to my car, and I kind of drank it down.
Yeah.
That has to be poured into a glass.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did not taste. It had nearly none of the same punch. That it did when we had poured it into glasses and it kind of sat for a few seconds.
Yeah.
Like, it's what we would call, like, if you were describing, like, a wine, that it's really tight.
Yeah.
That there's no, like, you know the flavor's in there, but it needs exposure.
Okay, so maybe get the Cure-All Cola and then try it in the glass.
I mean, it's worth maybe pouring it into a glass and trying it out of the bottle in both.
Yeah.
But, yeah, no, that ginger beer needed a glass. Like, it didn't have nearly the same effect.
See, and I haven't even, like, tried the sarsaparilla yet in a glass. Yeah. But it tastes really good just from the bottle.
From the bottle, so yeah.
Which, you know those CBD sugar cubes?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, my body was particularly sore the other day, so I went ahead and tried one.
Yeah.
Because that's legal for me to do.
Right.
Just clarifying that now.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is like when you drop it into like an orange juice or whatever, it kind of like bubbles a bit and then it dies down. It's kind of like an Alka-Seltzer.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't think putting it into a soda what would happen.
Oh no.
So I dropped it into the soda and immediately I see the in there and I'm just like, oh, that's funny. And then it's coming up the neck of the bottle.
Oh shit.
So I lost some sarsaparilla to the cutting board, and I have to say that is... I don't recommend anybody mix proper sarsaparilla, with CBD, because the end result was a strange feeling of like my entire body was relaxed and chilled. My brain was zen as shit, but at the same time, it wanted to run 1,000,000 miles per hour on whatever the fuck I chose to do.
Yeah.
Like, I got hyper-focused. On top of, it felt like I could smell colors. And taste sounds. Like, I unlocked a new state of transcendence by doing that.
Yeah, probably not the best idea for people that aren't prepared for it.
I wasn't prepared for it. I'm just glad I didn't have an anxiety attack.
Oh shit. Mom, I'm having a bad trip. You get admitted to the waiting room on sarsaparilla and tainted sugar. Yeah. Boy. All right. Well,
what's funny is those sugar cubes aren't even actually sugar.
Well, here's a little
free sugar cubes.
A little preview of next week here, or the next episode here. Mm-hmm. Candace is on vacation this week.
Is she actually on vacation?
I think so, but she's playing interviews like she did the last time she went on vacation.
Yeah.
Her first interview, I swear to God, is about 2.5 hours long. A lot of it, I'm just cutting. A lot of it is going on the cutting room floor, but she talks with a guy who claims that he knows what happened with Malaysian Flight 370 several years ago.
Mm-hmm.
He gives one good explanation. One.
All right.
Unfortunately, it's not his theory. His theory is so wackadoodle.
I swear, if it involves a Satanist, a Frankist, a Marxist, and a goddamn Freemason...
It involves none of those.
Okay.
What it does involve, you won't believe until you hear it. No.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
no,
the
no.
the holy
It's-
whatever
it's-
they call
it's-
5 is out.
It's none of the usual suspects,
okay.
and yet somehow all of them. We'll get around to it, but that's the only taste I'm going to give everybody.
Oh, don't forget about the calendar thing that you grabbed from the ones in Byerly's.
Oh yeah, yeah. I had grabbed a local Chabad calendar. We have a big Chabad Lubavitch school here, and they had a stack of calendars over at our Lunds and Byerly's location nearby, and so I grabbed one because it was free. And there's nothing more Jewish about me than grabbing a free calendar from the Jewish school
Yeah.
in a grocery store that is not run by Jewish people.
No.
But they have a nice kosher section. Anyway,
It's the only place you
it's
can
funny
get
is that
beef liver.
the place it's part of Rabbi Mendelssohn Schneerson's version of Judaism, and he has a couple of really nice things to say in the front of it. And I recommend if anyone has access to such a thing, maybe get it for yourself. It's interesting to see how the other side lives every now and then.
Yeah.
Any rate, that's it. I think we can cut this one off for now. You got anything else to say?
No, not really.
All right. Well, see y'all again in 2 weeks. Bye.
See you in 2 weeks. Ciao.